Good morning, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order. We respectfully acknowledge that the Township of Algonquin Highlands is located on Treaty 20 Mishi-Saugig territory and in the traditional territory of the Mishi-Saugig and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations. We also acknowledge a historical shared presence of other Indigenous nations throughout the area. We recognize these original inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial. Could I have a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda, please? Councillor Short-Reed and Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Short-Reed, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved, the August 17th, 2023 agenda be approved as circulated.
All in favor? That's carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof today? Councillor Short-Reed.
I have a pecuniary interest for under planning for the proposed road closing allowance for RNF Moreland, as I am employed by them.
Thank you. I will have some mayor's remarks to make, but I will save them until just prior to the appropriate delegation. So could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes of July the 20th, please? Councillors Richards and Barry.
Moved by Councillor Richards, seconded by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved, the July 20th, 23 regular and public meeting minutes be approved as circulated.
All in favor? We now move into the public meeting section. Do we have to have a resolution for that?
Yep. To go into.
Do you have a mover and a seconder to go into a public meeting? Councillors Barry and Short-Reed.
Moved by Councillor Barry, seconded by Councillor Short-Reed. Be it resolved that council adjourns its regular meeting at 9:02 a.m. in order to proceed into a public meeting for the purpose of zoning bylaw amendment application AHZBA 123 W Everett's Enterprises Limited, part of Lot 30, Concession 4, Geographic Township of Stanhope.
All in favor? That's carried. Morning, Mr. O'Callaghan.
Morning, Mayor and Council.
You would give us your report, please.
Thank you. This property is zoned extractive industrial M2 and designated rural under the official plan. The property is approximately 90 acres in area with 425 meters of frontage on Highway 118. Surrounding uses are generally rural and rural residential, and the lands are currently developed as a licensed pit operation. The owner is proposing to permit a saw and or planing mill as defined in the zoning bylaw as an additional permitted use in order to allow for wood processing on the subject property. The purpose and effect of the zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone the lands from extractive industrial pit to extractive industrial pit with an exception to permit wood processing as an additional permitted use. Notice of the rezoning was posted on the property, circulated to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands, and posted on the township's website, as well as circulated to all prescribed agencies. No written objections have been received to date, and staff are recommending approval of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment as circulated.
Do members of council have any questions for Mr. O'Callaghan? Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Thanks, Sean. Could you tell us, to the degree that you're aware, what the noise difference would be? I realize that extractive has the potential of being very noisy a lot of the time, or sometimes it's once a month. And sawmills could also be once a month or could be all the time. So do you have any sense of any noise changes and how that might impact the neighborhood?
Based on the fact that it is already a pit operation, I don't see there being a dramatic increase in noise coming from the property. It is well buffered from the highway and from surrounding properties. So I don't have concerns with the noise on site.
Any other questions for Sean? Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak to the application, either for or against? No one online who wishes to speak to the application? Okay, do we have a resolution before we come out of the meeting or within the meeting? Okay. Could I have a mover and a seconder then to come out of the public meeting? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Richards.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, council adjourns its public meeting at 9:06 a.m. and the regular meeting resume.
All in favor? That's carried. And could I have a mover and a seconder to approve the application? Councillors Barry, Deputy Mayor Dayu.
By Councillor Barry, second by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved, council receives report PL 7823 regarding the rezoning of lands located at part of Lot 30, Concession 4, Geographic Township of Stanhope, submitted by Sean O'Callaghan, dated August 17th, 2023, and that council directs a bylaw be tabled for consideration during its regular meeting.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Sean. So we now move into our delegations, and first up are Luba Cargill and Carmen Galea to talk to us about apple tree identification. If you want to display your sign, you can maybe lay it in front of the desk or so that we can see it. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and councillors. My name is Luba Cargill, and I'm a volunteer with the ATIP project. And
My name is Carmen Gallia, and I'm a fourth-year student at Toronto Metropolitan University studying urban sustainability, urban and environmental sustainability and geography. And also a volunteer with ATIP.
yes, and we're very happy to have Carmen volunteer, help us volunteer with ATIP.
If you wouldn't mind pulling your microphone just a little bit closer, that'd be great. Thanks.
We're here to talk to you about the Apple project in Halliburton. And we are grateful for the opportunity to speak to you about apples in Halliburton. Now, when we started this project, people said to me and said to us, there's no apples in Halliburton. And we kind of thought, well, maybe there aren't. And we had a plan to find 10 Apple locations in Halliburton County. And since then, we found over 120 locations of apples. Now, the other thing we found was that the Steve Hill from the Halliburton Highlands Museum provided us with those posters that are there. And one of them is from 1897. And it shows that apples were part of the prize list then. And by 1902, the apples were also on the prize list, but at that time, and it's also on the poster there, at that time, they required 4 different varieties of apples and 3 apples of each variety on a plate to be entered into the agricultural fair of Halliburton County. So apples have a long, long history, over centuries old history in Halliburton County. They have not been prioritized, and they have not been taken care of very well over the last few years. And we're trying to change that, aren't we? Yes.
Absolutely.
And this project started in April when Professor Andrew Gordon, Director of ULinks, called about a ULinks proposal I had submitted, trying to figure out the variety of these apples that want to grow in this area, because we have the short growing season and we have very harsh winters. And most maps will tell you we're north of the apple tree boundaries, but the apple trees seem to continue to grow here. And from then, Professor Gordon and ULinks have helped and provided support for the Apple project. And the first ULinks proposal was for an apple tree identification project. And that's where Carmen's going to take over that area to identify the apple and create an apple inventory in the area. And there are many trees and we're finding there's many trees, apple trees in Haliburton County, and they are in places such as Abbey Gardens, Haliburton Forest, Haliburton Highlands Land Trust, Barnum Creek Nature Reserve, Sir Sam's Ski Hill, just to name a few. There's also the old orchard that got me thinking about all this program on the corner of Buckslide Road and Walker's Line. There's an old orchard there that I was in total disbelief when I came up here to see that it was still active and growing. And there are newly planted orchards, and they are on private property, municipal land, local farms, as well as overgrown forested areas. These trees have been often forgotten and neglected, but they continue to survive and produce apples. If you look around, you'll see all these apples, and then we have nothing to do. We don't know what to do with them anymore. The purpose of the study is to increase resident awareness of existing old apple trees, highlight the need for care and maintenance of existing trees, renew an existing food resource, and that's a very important aspect of it, increase availability of locally grown and produced products, increase food security, help reduce environmental cost of food transportation from outside the county, provide data for Haliburton GIS map to add apple tree layer, provide Haliburton master gardeners with information for further research, provide additional products for the farmers market, and provide increased apple supply for Search Applesauce project, and provide additional tourism opportunities for the Apple Blossom Tour in May when all the trees are blossoming. Now, I should highlight that the master gardeners, did you want to?
Sure, I can speak to that. The Haliburton Master Gardeners Association is currently partnered with the University of Guelph Feral Apple Tree Program. So again, they're doing studies from Manitoulin Island to Haliburton County that are looking at the DNA of these apple trees, because like Luba had previously mentioned, we are above the line where apples have historically been grown commercially. And so it's kind of a wonder, considering we're on Canadian Shield and we have such harsh cold winters, why they continue to do so well here, also considering that nobody is tending to them. So they actually came to my homestead recently and took 27 samples from my trees to find the heritage of these trees, to understand what lineage they came from and why they do well here, and maybe that we can emphasize that in the future by introducing the same variety of trees that have historically done well in the county.
And so the ATIP project, the Apple Tree Identification Project, has 4 steps. The first part is the identification of the trees. And the second step is Apple Tree Intensification Project, which means that working with arborists and master gardeners and with to help apple tree owners take care of their apples and increase the productivity of the apples. And this would be together with the master gardeners and the University of Guelph project. Step 3 is Apple Tree Increase Project, means now that we know how to maintain and care for our apples, we can now plant new ones because we know what to plant, where to plant, and how to take care of them. And then we're going to have too many apples, we hope. And then we have to create an apple industry, and it can be used to provide nonprofit organizations that already exist in the county with apples to increase local food security, and also be the basis of creating an industry based on apple products, new apple products, existing apple products, and we're hoping we have some apple and maple syrup products, because that would be a nice local match, and contribute to business and tourism opportunities. And we're also planning to have an Apple Blossom Tour 2024 in May, when the trees blossom. They don't all blossom at the same time, so it's kind of a self-guided tour for about a 2-week stretch in the last 2 weeks in May. And also we're thinking about creating a symposium to have some research and other industry and municipal local interest discussed. So we are here to ask council for 3 things. Did you?
Sure. ATIP is asking council for 3 things. 1 is a letter of support from Algonquin Highlands Municipality for the ATIP program. 2 is for the Algonquin Highlands Municipality as apple tree owners to participate in this program specifically as our trees on municipal lands. And 3 is to help us identify apple trees on municipal lands and refer the locations to us for further studies with ULinks and the Master Gardeners Association. The process of identification by municipal staff could be conducted through a memo to Parks and Rec staff to just note any trees on municipal property as they're conducting routine maintenance, as to not create any additional burden on the department. I know it's a very busy time, especially this time of year. For council to commit to planting more apple trees in the future when the opportunity for new landscaping arises. We're not saying that every tree that needs to be planted by Algonquin Highlands needs to be an apple tree, but something that we'd like council to consider, that not only are they beautiful, but they serve a purpose. So if you're planting any trees in Algonquin Highlands for an aesthetic purpose, consider an apple tree, because it can also aid in food security and tourism and industry in the area. And for council to help increase local self-sufficiency by allowing community groups to pick apples from the identified trees on municipal lands, such as the Search Apple Tree Project and FoodNet. And lastly, for council to participate in the Apple Tree Blossom Tour in 2024 during the long weekend, to allow for self-identified apple tree locations on municipal lands to be mapped and promoted so residents and tourists alike can enjoy them and get out and enjoy the county.
And by becoming involved in this initiative, Algonquin Highlands will set an example and provide important leadership for the ATIP program, with beneficial results for the municipality, its residents, while fostering the beginning of an apple industry in Haliburton County. And we would be happy to answer any questions.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. This really provides some clarification on, what you're hoping to do and the benefits of the program that you're involved in. It actually sounds pretty exciting in a lot of ways, and ties in with a lot of the work that other groups are doing, particularly when it comes to food security and things like that. I wonder if at any time you have spoken to the county about your work, because I'm thinking that there might be some assistance there with respect to the GIS program that they've got. And you might also work with the tourism department, who would help you promote your, if you're going to have a tour in the spring, that they might be able to provide you with some assistance there. So I urge you to talk to the county. Come with your delegation to the county, and I suspect you'd get a positive reaction. Any questions from council or comments that you'd like to make? Councillor Richards.
Just a few months ago, we actually discussed the planting of fruit trees when we are looking at landscaping options. There was some concern about it attracting bears, particularly in places like our public parks where we have people around. Is the apple tree just as prone as any fruit tree to attracting more bears to that area? Or is it something you can be managed in a different way?
That's a good question. I really don't have an answer for that. I have not personally heard of bears being attracted by apple trees, but I'm sure they probably are. Like, I haven't heard of incidents where they have been attracted. I don't know. That would be something that we would have to look at to see to what extent they are a danger. Apple trees are a danger to the local population. The more often asked question was, the deer are coming and are attracting deer, and the deer are eating the apples. And of course, in our deer aren't as dangerous or threatening to humans as the bears are. But our answer to the deer question is usually we need to share with the deer, but I don't know if we want to share with the bears.
Well, there are some locations I know, specifically in Haliburton, if I'm not mistaken, there are apple trees right in around where Canoe FM is, and the deer are
Yes.
often in that location and do create a bit of a traffic problem. But that's not to say that something can't be worked out. I'd be more worried about deer than bears.
Yeah, I actually live in Haliburton Village, and I'm on a deer highway, as I call it. So, but as if you have information of the exact locations of where these bears are found, then that would be really good for us to know about that, and then we could try and work something out. Do you have specific locations and times, or is it just kind of a general concern?
It was a general concern when we were discussing it. like I said, just a few months ago when we were looking at landscaping options. I really like the idea of having not only apple trees, but fruit trees as a sustainable food source for our population. But I do recognize that bears are more prevalent around us, and we don't want to cause the bears to move their territory into public spaces.
Yes, and I
So-
think probably the reason I don't have an answer, because the MNR is usually more expert in providing advice. So we would definitely have to, I think we will consult with the MNR on to get an answer to the concern that you have regarding bears and apple trees.
I think it also vary site to site as well, depending on the proposed location. A lot of the time, maybe it would not be of higher risk or maybe of low risk, depending on where it's located. I know that if there's abundant food sources in the area, they might not be as privy to go and get apple trees if they're already kind of satisfied with what's in the area.
Councillor Deputy Mayor Dayu, sorry.
You mentioned a number of ways in which this project contributes to our community, which is lovely. Among those contributions, have you overlapped with the Algonquin Highlands heritage map yet? Or are you aware of it? Are you interested in it? It's very much worth checking out. It shows, it's a beautiful map online that documents where various settler activities happened, where historical sites are, where some of our original settler families came and put up their homesteads. And I could see original orchards fitting quite beautifully into that
That would
heritage map.
absolutely.
So I'd encourage you to take a look at that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Other questions or comments? Councillor Barry.
Sorry, can you just say again who you'd like the letter of support for?
The letter of support is to the ATIP organization. It's apple tree. It starts as the apple tree identification project, but if you take it's apple tree identification, intensification, increase in industry. So there's the 4 I's in the middle there, but we just use ATIP. It's registered as ATIP Halliburton.
Okay.
As a corporation.
Thanks.
And it sounds like the approach that you've put out to how we could help is something that, you know, we could assist with in our normal day-to-day operations. We don't want to add to the workload, but the way you've approached it sounds like a reasonable approach, and things that, you know, when we are considering doing landscaping or planting, we can for sure, you know, identify the trees and plant trees. And, you know, when our staff are maintaining certain, you know, lands that we know that there are trees there, for them to identify them to us, you know, I think we could probably support that. So if we could, if there are no further questions, maybe have a resolution to receive the delegation and a letter of support. We have a mover and a seconder for that. Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, council receives a delegation from Luba Cargill and Carmen Galea regarding the Apple Tree Identification Project, ATIP, and that council provides a letter of support signed by the mayor for the Apple Tree Identification Project, and council directs staff to participate in the identification of maple trees on municipal property, and further that council participate in the 2024 Apple Blossom Tour.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very
so
much.
Thank you very much.
Our next delegation are from the Halliburton County Library Board, Chair O'Brien and the CEO, Chris Stevenson. Give us your annual update. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good morning, Mayor Danielson,
Good morning.
Council, Deputy Mayor. Pleasure to be here today, especially in person. It's really nice. Nice for a change this year. We're here, myself, Library Board Chair David O'Brien. Thanks for coming. We're here to update you on the events and happenings at Halliburton County Public Library. And I also am excited to be here today to continue the conversation that was started by Councillor Dayu, just about the reimagining what might be possible for the Dorset area with respect to public library services. So I have a special slide about that too. Since last time we met you, oh, is my slide deck on that? Oh,
It's up.
so everyone sees it already. Okay,
Yep.
Gotcha. I see.
It's behind you.
Okay, thank you. So since last time we met you, new staff have been hired. We actually have now 2 Carols and 2 Hillarys on staff at the branch level. This second wave of hiring was really important, as we did have some people leave for new life plans in other places. We have another person joining us just at the end of summer as well. One of the key highlights of our branches throughout the system is the fact that we've reorganized our schedule. So now we are operating library services in the evenings for almost every single branch, just allowing people who work during the day to come and use their public library at least once a week. This restructuring also means that our staff are traveling. They're very nimble staff. They bring their expertise from branch to branch. They all have different program backgrounds and interests. So there's new things that are on offer as a result of this movement. And then it allows us to have the new staff paired up with senior staff for ongoing training throughout the year when they work at the 2 larger branches where there are 2 staff members. Very exciting summer reading club, as always, got kicked off on June 17th. So it's been operating for 2 months today. We have almost 200 participants. This is all ages, right from pre-readers to readers of child age, teens, and also adults. This year we launched something that was working really well with adults for the teens, and that's the book bingo. And so, yeah, it's really been great to have people come back, both local folks and visitors at their seasonal residences. And the prizes are, of course, given out at the end of summer. So that's an exciting climax. Active and passive programming is happening. You'll probably have noticed at the library next door here, Stanhope Branch has the Story Walk, and Story Walks are happening all across Ontario. We have one happening in each municipality this summer, and as well we have a new partnership with Haliburton, Muskoka, and Kawartha Lakes Children's Water Festival, and that's resulted in a new partnership program whereby people can learn about becoming a water hero. So that's conservation and use of water in their local areas. And just like with our Story Walk, people can pick up activity sheets to do afterwards. Groups such as the Stanhope Book Club and book clubs across the county are operating year-round. Some of them do take a summer break, but they'll be back in the fall. And then inside the branches, we have new signage starting to roll out. The branding that we came up with about a year and a half ago is starting to proliferate, and it's bringing cohesion to the system so that when you walk into any branch, including Stanhope, you'll start to recognize that you're part of a library system that's comprehensive across the county. So that we're getting a lot of positive feedback about the branding. This year as well, we have new 2D scanners at the branches, new color printers in all the branches. Updated computers are ongoing. And then we also introduced air purifiers. This was important when the forest fire smoke was starting to impact. You open the door, or, someone leaves the door open by accident, and the smoke comes in pretty quickly. So this has been definitely helping in our locations without built-in HVAC. I think with respect to connectivity improvements, not so much here because the internet's excellent, but we do have at least one of our branches being funding coming from the provincial government for connecting public libraries. And we're really excited that Highland Grove will now soon have fiber optic access. We could have the next slide, please. Thank you. So there's lots happening on this screen, and that's because there's been lots happening in all of our branches, but especially these ones are showing Stanhope Branch. We have some great partnerships with local area organizations and across the county, but they're starting to opt to do programming in all of our branches. So we have a new partnership with Pingwa out of Lindsay, and they do STEAM programming. So this is science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, and they're hitting the road. They're coming up to Haliburton County, and over the next couple of years, we expect they're going to be coming to all of our branches, big and small. And this is to run tech programming, but also to offer kits that they help us build that families can take home and learn about technology right at home as well. So we have advocates in every community who support us, teachers, for example, and we get feedback, like I said, from the public, which helps us shape the things that we do in every location. Some of the stats from the summer so far, we had 73 children and adults come for programming in June, and in July, a total of 89 adults and kids. Sometimes that's grandparents too, which we love to see. Next slide, please. Core services, of course, are always ongoing and important. Literacy, inspiration to read and learn, research and explore, and also to support the community by learning about these tech tools. This is reducing the digital divide. In the coming years, you'll probably see the use of tablets more often because it allows us to free up a computer, especially if there's only 1 or 2 computers in a branch and they're being used. The tablets help us access the catalog, and so they're reducing wait lines or wait time for that. And then programming and outreach, we do have a really great programmer, Hillary, who's organized our staff to create new things and always imagine what could be around the next corner. We show up at key community events such as Bookapalooza, the fairs when possible as well. This summer we were hoping to have students, but we didn't actually attract the right fit. So we unfortunately didn't have summer students to help. The opening of Stanhope last December was an exciting time for both staff and patrons. And since then, all staff have been trained on the use of the accessibility lift. And we've received many positive comments, both online and in person, about the facility. Since that time, we've invested in new chairs. And like I said, some new technology, a new printer. And there's also in Stanhope Branch now a dehumidifier and a portable oil heater in the basement just to make it a bit more comfortable, especially for the book clubs and some of the kids programs. Next slide, please. Very briefly, I'd just like to take you through some of the changes that have happened as a result of having a part-time marketing and communications coordinator. She's transformed, this is Tessa, and she's transformed the way that we promote and showcase library programs. And when you have a piece of library information now, it's going to look familiar every time because of our use of colors. The font is standardized, and the people are receiving this as well as in their home newsletters, on our website, social media. Everything is conforms to a standard, a brand standard. And we're really proud of the new look and the feel of the library system, and excited to have this splash of color added to the Stanhope branch. And as the next slide should show, Dorset as well. Sorry, not the next slide, but in this case, this is just highlighting how the change has happened over time. On the top row is the older assets that we've created, and then along the bottom, again, the colors, the font, and the use of icons to improve accessibility. So the bottom 4 items are all brand new in the last year or so. And one note, much like I'm sure your organization, all of our staff have been trained on accessibility, and so all of these documents that make their way to the public have been checked with accessibility software, and we're always looking for ways to improve, but so far so good. And then on the next slide, I'm really pleased to show you the change that's happened up in Dorset with the library lockers. We did have comments such as, what are these lockers for? And now people can tell with the logo, and they can go to the website and find out more about how to sign up. So we've had at least one sign up, I think, since this branding has happened about 2 weeks ago. It's also a stopgap measure for the fact that these were always meant to be temporary lockers, and they were starting to, due to their location, have a bit of humidity affecting the edges, and they were starting to rust a bit. That's been sanded off, and the vinyl will last, we're told, a good long time. So yeah, we're really pleased about our relationship with Robinsons for allowing us to operate here, and It does fluctuate the use of the lockers, but we hope, new campaign will help drum up some interest. And then with the next slide, please. I'll just let you know that the Friends of the Library, of course, have been always very supportive of the library and in fundraising and advocacy. They've had a super successful year running book sales and as well special programming this year. They'll be running a gala event on October 22nd, which I'm excited about. It's going to feature Maureen Jennings from Murdoch Mysteries fame. So she'll be coming to speak, and sometimes they'll have a turnout of over 100 people. So this is a great way to support the library. We're really pleased about that. It's allowed us to purchase book club sets every year, as well as ukuleles for 2 new clubs. The Evergreen Book List, which people look forward to. Updated books on climate change and mental health, radon detectors, which will be starting to lend this fall and into the spring. A good time to use a radon detector, apparently. And then as well, they sponsored a bookmark contest, which was one of our most popular events at the beginning of the summer. I'm pleased to say that the van that you see on the screen is now at Minden Ford. I'm going to sign documents this morning, and it's a really exciting next shift for the library to allow us to hit the road, to take programming everywhere, as well as the book bins as we travel around, and create a library presence that's recognizable in every community as we pass through. I think at this point, I'm just going to stop and we'll go to actually the next slide if I could, and I'll pass it over to David O'Brien for a perspective on the library board.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you, Madam Mayor and Council, for having us here today. Special thanks to Deputy Mayor Dayu and Mayor Danielson in her role as warden of the county to be members of our board. You contribute a whole bunch of help to us. I've been on the board of the library for a couple of years now, I think, and have been chair for the last year. One of the great opportunities I had when I came on the board was to hire this guy beside me as part of the board. And I just wanted to tell you today that we are doing some extraordinarily exciting things at the library board. Chris has mentioned some of them, but there's an underlying change that's going on in the library that most people don't see. I see it because I'm involved with it. Deputy Mayor Dayo sees it, and certainly Mayor Danielson sees it. There's a sense of renewal going on among the staff because of what we're doing in the community and how we're changing the way we think about a library. We're a small library, we admit that, but small can do a whole bunch of really interesting and innovative things. Some of you may know that my career was spent as the CIO of many cities in Ontario and very large cities, and we had big libraries. I've never seen them in all my years do what we're doing here in such a short period of time. And I just want to tell the council that stick with us, because there's a whole bunch more to come, and it's going to be great. It's going to get even better as time goes on. And I want to thank you all for allowing me to be part of this meeting and to be part of the library board, quite frankly. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David.
Thank you.
And also a shout out to the staff who make it all possible. It really is, we've got a lot of cohesion right now, and morale is going pretty well too. At this point, I'm just going to briefly outline some of the possibilities for what could happen at the Dorset Rec Center should you decide to incorporate library services back in. We do have healthy reserves at the library that would allow for capital expenditures to work with designers and make things happen. This is all just an initial brainstorm. We're not committing to anything or guaranteeing anything, but we wanted to let you know that, library service did operate in the Dorset Rec Center at one time. It was turned into a grab and go service, which also worked. When I looked at the numbers, they were better when people came in person. There is that browsing experience that makes readers a little bit more excited about libraries. And there are ways in which we can occupy not so much floor space at any given time, because I know that there's many other activities happening in the rec center. But when we do show up, or when staff are there to run a library desk, much like an airport kiosk, we can put things on wheels. We can make things very mobile and reconfigure the space to bring shelves out, or book bins and computers into the space, so that it can be flexible and work with your needs for recreation, as well as information and all the other things that go on in this space. So there have been a lot of advancements in library furniture, and mobile is definitely the future. It allows us to change spaces very rapidly and safely. There's something called Dynoflex, which is a Canadian-made company, and they use recycled rubber to create 2-foot floor tiles. And it's they're very firm but forgiving on the feet, and they just allow for if you cut it into carpet, a way for safely pushing fairly heavy but low to the ground bookshelves. This is just one example for how we could make use of space. When we're there, we can run one-on-one tech time. We can give readers advisory. We can help people with their searching and research, as well as any other reason that they come to the library for. So we do have staff that live in the Algonquin Highlands area, and we'd be pleased to dispatch them to operate library services. It really just comes down to availability of space, what might be possible from your perspective. There was talk at some time about moving the lockers over from the Robinson's store, and I'm not sure if they'll be in great shape by that time when we're ready to make a move, if that happens. And then also, if you roll out lockers at one place for 24/7 service, then we'd have to probably do it at the other branches as well, just for equity purposes. So again, this is an open conversation from our perspective, and there are also ways for technology to help with self-checkout options now, where you can scan a book yourself, just like you do at the supermarket, self-checkout. All of these things have not yet been discussed at the board level, other than the initial conversation, but please keep us in mind if that's possible for where you're headed with the Dorset Rec Center. I believe that's it from us, but we would like to make some time for a question period if we could.
A couple of comments. I do love the new branding that you've got. I see it's even right down to the lanyard that you're wearing.
Oh, yeah.
And the look of the lockers in Dorset, like that's just such an extraordinary change. Makes a huge statement. They look absolutely fabulous. So I'm really chuffed to see that. I'm very, very pleased to hear about your partnership with the Children's Water Festival. I think that's really an interesting partnership. I know the library's always had a long list of partnerships that work in many ways for the community, and that's one sounds absolutely great to me. When is your Bookapalooza?
Bookapalooza starts on the 15th of September. So we're one of many organizations that's part of organizing. There's a committee for that, and it should be a great event. Lawrence Hill will be coming. He's famous for writing the Book of Negroes, The Illegal, and most recently a children's book, which he's very prolific, it seems.
Your last author was fabulous. I'm really pleased to hear that there is some willingness to provide capital funding. Should we all come to an agreement on some type of service that we can provide? Council has not really had an in-depth conversation about that. I'm not sure that we're prepared to go back to the original space that we use, but there are other spaces and places in the center that I think that there's some opportunity for discussion there. No promises, but I think that we all want to be able to see library services continue to the greatest extent possible that we can here in Algonquin Highlands. So I look forward to ongoing discussions about that. Before I get to questions from council, the only question I've got is why you would purchase radon detectors. That just seems so far outside of the scope of library services.
So there is a program in most public libraries called Library of Things, and people can come to some of our branches for skate passes or sports equipment for use behind, say, Dysart branch, for example. We've even had groups approach us to say we'd love to sponsor tackle boxes for ice fishing. There's really like trends that come and go, and whatever really hooks new folks to come into the library, we're thrilled. But there have been a lot of information campaigns that we team up with the health unit with regards to such as, say, the tick display that we had here at Stanhope this summer. And then one more piece, I know over where I grew up in Muskoka, the use of granite in basements and everything was a concern. And there were people that went door to door and kind of drummed up fear about radon. So there was for a time those concerns, and radon detectors are quite inexpensive. They can be used at for a week or so and recalibrated when we get them back. But it just helps people understand, if they've got an issue at their home, and if they're renovating or whatever, they can do a little bit of a test. So
Can I just comment, if I may, Mayor, that was a really good question, because it leads me to what I was going to say earlier. And then I just simply forgot about it. And that is that libraries now are becoming more than just a place to get a book and bring a book back. They're evolving as a significant part of the community. And with that comes along a lot of questions from the community about, do you have any information on this? We'd like this kind of product. Can you do something to help us with this? And so the more that we can accommodate that, the better we become as a significant part of the community and integrate ourselves in the community. So we're always looking for that little thing that could make the difference in our community. And that's why, it was a great question, because a normal person say, well, libraries don't do radon things. That's just not their thing. But actually, we've had a lot of people ask.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm really pleased to hear that you've moved into a process where your staff are more mobile and nimble, and that I think is really important. That some of the senior staff are helping some of the newer staff, and that they can move from site to site. I think that will make a huge difference. Anyway, I'd look to questions or comments. Councillor Barry.
You mentioned about the accessible lift in Stanhope, and I just want to say that a lot of the people that work at the library have gone above and beyond in regards to meeting people at the door that are having accessibility issues, just even getting to the library. I know that, and it's amazing the knowledge that they hold in regards to just holding books that they think someone might like, the relationship with the tellers and the customers is pretty amazing. I just had a question about the Ontario Parks Permit Program. If you could just touch on what that is.
Sure. So this is something that we've run for a couple of years now, and it basically comes in a DVD box, but it's a permit that hangs on your windshield mirror, and basically allows access. So for example, I used it one day to go up to Algonquin Park. You still have to stop in at the office just to confirm the parking. They have an online application for registering your license plate, but that's free as well. So it just gives families in the area who might want to explore parks from here to Silent Lake, for example, anywhere in Ontario, actually. So I highly recommend them. It just makes your experience free and allows you to bounce around all summer long, all season long, really, and try them out. So that's, again, one more of the library of things that we offer. Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Dayu.
At risk of repeating what I said yesterday, I think the rebranding is a real success. I love the colors and how dynamic they are. Your use of shapes in multiple ways. It's readily identifiable. I really think it's a tremendous success story. So well done to the whole team for doing that. And the question that I have is with regards to the Dorset location. As council explores this question further and explores potential spaces further, the one query that I think a number of us have is about the security of library assets, so that when official opening hours that are staffed are not taking place, that same space might be used for other purposes. So you mentioned mobile book stacks, which is wonderful. How secure are you able to make those to your level of satisfaction so that the room, if it is indeed a room, we're still blue sky thinking at the minute, but if there is a room, that room might be redeployed for other purposes outside of opening hours?
Yeah, it's a great question. To be fair, I haven't seen the inside of the space before, so I don't even really know. I've seen old photos.
It's been some time since we have. as
Yeah,
well.
fair enough, for understandable reasons. But with the flexibility of the wheels, it would just be a matter of training those that were required to move it for whatever reason. They do have locks on them as well, so children or others might not be able to play with them. If it were a sort of a room and there were assets, that is the main concern is privacy of patron information. So all of that would have to be locked in cabinets, and computers would probably go away into some sort of locking cabinet. But really, all that to say that we're just very flexible with what you are able to offer in terms of space. And we, due to the pandemic, have some resources that we normally wouldn't have, namely the library reserves. And it's a good use of capital funds. There's only so many books we can buy because there's only so much space in our libraries. And we always have to discard books in order to make room for the new ones. So capital purchases are a great investment.
Any other questions or comments? Well, I'd like to thank you, gentlemen, very much. And we look forward to ongoing partnerships together and see what we can do at the Dorset Rec Center and beyond. Could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the delegation? Councillors Barry and Short-Reed.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Councillor Short-Reed. Be resolved, Council receives a delegation from Chris Stevenson and David O'Brien regarding the library's 2023 annual report.
All in favor? That's carried. So we can accommodate some people. I'm not sure how many are here, but we'll just be a minute. There's a fellow who wished he had his own chair. So our apologies, we don't have chairs for everyone. We're really limited in space today, so it's kind of standing room only for some. So we have Logan and Christina Percy and James Cooper. Before you begin your delegation, I did want to make some comments. And I do want everyone to know that that it was not our intention to make everyone wait. We do have a specific order that we run our meetings, and delegations are received in the order or dealt with in the order that they're received. So it really has not been our intention to make people wait. I just want to say that the proposal to institute licenses of occupation for developments on municipally owned shore road allowances across the road from shoreline property have been ongoing for as much as 10 years, since 2013. It's been a topic of discussion during many meetings during that time. And given the challenges associated with the policy, it has been placed on the back burner several times, given the challenges associated with it. However, open discussions have been underway at numerous council meetings over the past several years. It has been listed on our agendas. It has been included in detailed reports submitted as part of our agendas, written about in local papers, and commented on in the mayor's report on Canoe FM. Mayor Moffat for years has been urging residents to sign up for news and notices on our website, where all of our agendas are listed, and a quick scan can show folks any items that it might be of concern without having to read the whole agenda or long reports that you're not concerned about. It is unfortunate that a brief article in the Highlander suggested that this would involve all shoreline properties, because it does not. And even more unfortunate that the correction was a small 3-line piece on page 8, and unlikely to be seen or resolve any confusion. Clarifications on the township's Facebook page and website, while helpful, seem to have failed to quell the noise arising from other newly established Facebook pages that have included a lot of misinformation, along with maligning of both staff and council, something that in my mind always fails to be anything other than counterproductive, and it has been in some cases, not in all, very mean-spirited and hurtful. There's nothing to be gained. The primary intent in establishing this policy has been to create a level playing field between waterfront properties that are immediately adjacent to the shoreline and waterfront properties that are across the road from the shoreline. While both are zoned shoreline residential, the assessment and resulting taxation is less for properties across the road from the shoreline. Those properties immediately adjacent to the shoreline pay higher taxes, as well as substantial fees to purchase their shoreline and for permits to build structures on that same shoreline. The proposed license of occupation is intended to legitimize existing and proposed uses of the shoreline by those folks who live across the road. For many years, property owners have developed structures and used them without benefit of permit and at no cost, something which is not fair for others who are immediately adjacent to the shoreline, who follow all of the required process. Licenses of occupation are in existence in many municipalities in Ontario, and in fact, Algonquin Highlands is in a minority. It's my understanding that all of the other 3 municipalities in the county do have something similar in place. The fees established are set on a cost recovery basis and not, as some have suggested, as a money grab for the township. We want to offer the opportunity to owners across the road to legally use and enjoy the land, legitimize existing infrastructure, and even improve the overall value of your property. So we'll hear your delegation, and council are allowed to ask questions of you.
Sure.
We will not hear from the audience. You're all here to listen and hear what we've got to say, and we will be discussing the policy a little bit later on in the meeting. That's all part of our standard process, our procedural bylaw details, where we talk about things. But I'm sure you'll hear more about it as time goes by. So anyway, welcome to you both, and over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and Council, for letting us be here today to talk about the proposed bylaw of this policy for license of occupation. My name's James Cooper. I'm here with my neighbor, Logan Percy. And as you can see, we're with a number of other people here as well. What we want to accomplish today, we just want to tell you how people are feeling about this bylaw. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to pass it over to Logan. He's going to address it from his viewpoint. And there's a number of questions that have come out. And it's adding to confusion out there that I think we need to address. And that's one of the reasons why we're here. So as a final thing, we have asks of council before they move forward with signing this bylaw. So the mood of the people, I would say we're angry, we're frustrated, and we're confused. From a point of view of anger, it's stemming from the fact that we were not aware of the incoming bylaw, even though you've said that there's been multiple meetings and such. Nobody that we've talked to had any understanding that it was going to happen. The first time we found out about this bylaw was when the Highlander article came out 3 weeks ago. And I've talked to a number of people. We have talked to a number of people. We've been on those websites or those Facebook pages, and nobody was heard about it. I know council will say that there's procedures in place for public access to information about bylaws being discussed, like council meetings being publicly streamed as they are today, or agendas being publicly available. But if so many people were not aware of this bylaw, then I believe something's broken in those procedures and you need to reevaluate them and update them. In the Highlander article, from listening to officials, liability seems to be the main issue here. But to our knowledge, there hasn't been one lawsuit that's been filed relative to this bylaw that's being addressed. Is it not more probable that there will be lawsuits from people using public trails, parks, and playgrounds? Based on the number of cars and people I see on a yearly basis that are climbing the James Cooper Trail, isn't it more probable that someone will get hurt there than on our docks? In today's environment, after finally getting through the pandemic, but now being hammered by higher costs of living, rising interest rates, and higher costs of food to put on the table, is it really prudent for council to thrust yet another expense on its constituents and make life even more difficult? I'll tell you that the people that are affected by this law are retired income people on fixed incomes like myself, young families like Logan, and cottagers that have been here for decades. I looked at your proposed fees and compared them to townships of Gravenhurst and the district of Muskoka. They seem to be significantly higher. For instance, at the district of Muskoka, and I printed this off of their website, their waterfront license of occupation, the fee for the legal is $219. The question I have is, why are those fees so much less? I've talked extensively with Logan, and we both described the last few weeks as a roller coaster ride of emotions, frustration, and confusion. An example of my confusion is in talking with officials, I was told that $2,500 deposit was required to cover legal fees payable by us, but in an article from Cottage Life dated August 8th, and I quote, it states, it would also require $2,500 deposit just at the time of application. That's to deal with any legal fees associated with registering these agreements. The deposit would be returned once the dock was successfully registered. So does that mean that we put up the $2,500 and then we get it back after this has all been said and done? No. Again, this is why there's confusion out there.
What it does mean,
Yeah.
The remainder of the fee that's unused after having gone through the legal process would be returned. So the $2,500 is to cover anything that might be incurred during the process, or if there's problems associated with it. But whatever is left over, be it ever so much or so little, would be returned. I guess it would depend on.
Sorry.
It would depend on the circumstances of each property because they're not all the same. I mean, I'm not going to get into responding to all of your questions now.
We understand that. We definitely understand that. I mean, the reason why we're here is there's so many questions about this, and we're feeling confused, and it's hit us so quickly. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Sean O'Callaghan publicly. Myself and Logan have talked to Sean on several occasions. To Sean's credit, he's been courteous and responsive, calling us back in a timely manner. But my point here is that on occasion, he hasn't had the answers for us. This is why we've compiled a list of questions that we'd like answered in writing from the council before signing that bylaw. I asked council, would you go into a legally binding contract where you're asked for significant fees without having all your questions answered? I think council believes that they're doing the right thing in introducing this. But isn't it their rightful duty as elected officials to listen to the concerns of their constituents and answer their questions before moving forward? I'd just like to thank you for listening to me. I'm going to turn it over to Logan.
Just one response to one comment that you made, that no one knew any of the details of this. That's not actually true. Some of the folks that have been commenting on the website that has been established were fully knowledgeable about.
Madam Chair, I understand that fully. What I'm telling you is that
A lot of people
a
don't.
lot of people, these people out here and myself and Logan were blindsided by it. And it is a
Understood.
huge monetary ask. And we are trying to scramble to try and figure this out. And we need your help. And that's why we've been in contact with Sean so much.
We've been accused of misinformation a few times here, and the only two articles I'm aware of out there are full of misinformation, the Highlander and the Cottage Life. So it makes it pretty difficult for us to be the problem. We're speculating. We're trying to figure it out. And it wasn't, if we have misinformation, it wasn't our intention. We're bouncing ideas back and forth to each other. And again, I've talked to Lisa and Sabrina through email, and Sean through email, and I appreciate their info. We all do, but we still have a lot more that we got to sort out. And anyways, I've got a bit of a written statement here. I'll read through as quick as I can. With
Before your written statement, I do want to let you know that I've spoken several times with the paper. Ask them to do a fulsome article, to call Sean, to speak to Sean, to write something fulsome that would explain things properly. And they have failed to do so.
I haven't been able to get a response out of any of the papers either. So I live on North Shore Road. MPAC says I live in a waterfront dwelling with indirect lake access. Algonquin Highlands obviously says that I'm shoreline residential. I spent a small fortune upgrading my rickety old dangerous dock that I purchased with my property about 5 years ago. It's dangerous. My kid went to the hospital over it. Well, I wasn't quite finished upgrading it. I paid a hefty premium for the implied waterfront rights that have been there since the first settlers arrived at Maple Lake. I don't think anyone's interrupted it since then until now. My tax bill is much higher than it would be without being legally defined as a shoreline residential with lake access. It is legally defined that way. So yes, it's less maybe than if there was no road there, but it's significantly more than if there was no lake there. About 4 years ago, not long after moving in, I went to Algonquin Highlands to inquire about a lease option and a process for fixing shoreline structures that were falling apart, as I also had the liability and access concerns that I wanted to sort out. My wife and I wanted to sort out. I was told that no leases or major repairs were going to be allowed until the shoreline bylaw was passed. I have slowly replaced as many sections of my 120-foot long dock as I can that allow me to maintain access to where I can dock a boat without it being bottomed out. I tore down a deck that my wife and I did not want to remove, but could no longer bear the thought of someone being seriously injured by it. We then installed snow fencing to protect our friends, family, and general public from the sharp eroding embankment that was uncovered when we removed the deck. A few weeks ago, the Highlander reported on this license of occupation, which would likely have never been noticed without the story by the looks of it. I immediately started combing through the web, trying to find any evidence of this policy, and it wasn't easy, but it's there. I understand it's on your website, and I'm not regularly on there, and that's my issue. After sorting through various reports and drafts that are there, of which I still have no idea which one's the current one, no idea, and I've looked through it. And speaking to neighbors, I began to understand some of the details. I communicated with Sean, Lisa, and Sabrina, and they all told me things I wanted to hear. It did help me feel better, but this policy does not feel right at all. Doesn't. I don't follow council meetings between work and kids, meals, a bit of sleep until today. I accept that as a citizen of this country and a resident of Algonquin Highlands, it's my duty to pay attention to my government and raise my hand up when I don't like what I see. And so here I am. I want you all to finish your term feeling proud of your efforts and accomplishments and spoken of as leaders in our community. We all share in the good and the bad, and virtually all of us want what is best for one another and for the entire municipality. I'm sure of it. So this morning I'm here attempting to represent my neighbors as best as I know how and offer you my advice in good faith. We feel upset, angry, confused, and blindsided. We've had to speculate and research and assume and hope that this is a good thing. But every test we put it through fails. We are now at the day that you intend to sign off on implementing this policy, and 230 or so of us are asking you to please not implement this yet. We need time to understand fully what this is. We have questions that deserve answers, and we likely have thought of some problems that will arise that you have not. We don't want to be we don't want this to be a miserable failure or be mad at you for signing this or not including us or not looking at this from our perspective. And the time to fix that is right now. Give us some time to learn and process the info that you already have for us. Ask questions and receive answers. We will then want to further review this information once we have it with our insurance companies, our lawyers, our friends, our family, and who knows who else, but we'll need some time. We've all gone through a few rough years. The economy looks sketchy and the state of the world is distressing, to say the least. We're all busy doing our very best to keep moving forward and make the best out of every day. Please pause this bylaw, give us some time, and show us that you represent us, the voters. And I'd like to quickly give you a sample of some of the questions. We're not expecting answers immediately. Will this license of occupation exclude public access from the area we occupy? It seems to be fairly straightforward that our insurance companies will not insure these areas if public access is allowed to continue, which makes it impossible to sign the lease the way the occupation license, the way it stands. Do you know how many property owners in Algonquin Highlands are being impacted by this new policy? Number of properties adjacent to the lake, but with a road between them. Would allowing us to purchase our areas not actually better address the liability issues, raise additional funds for the township, and reduce future issues and disputes? Similar to what Algonquin Highlands has done on numerous locations along Halls Lake Road and North Shore roads in recent years and decades, which I'm sure have some different scenarios and reasonings, but it's obviously possible. If the township has such significant liability concerns, and assuming that it is actually the reasoning for this policy, why wouldn't this liability issue be treated the same as any other township asset? Why must we pick up the entire tab for your liability concerns? Can I stop paying taxes that fund roads and bridges that I never use? Can you show us your analysis of how you've arrived at deciding that we are not paying our fair share of the taxes to allow us to continue using the waterfront? Is there anything there? What happens when our lot lines that are projected as per the draft, projected out to the lake to determine the boundaries, and if someone else's structures are on our new defined area, because there's a lot of those. So are we then having to move them? Are we having to insure them? Are we having to pay for it? Who's paying for it? What happens when I get in a lawsuit with my neighbor? So there's about 35 more questions that so far that I think are equally important. And they're included on this sheet that I will leave with you when I finish. And so to summarize, this is what we ask of council before making this bylaw effective. We ask the council answer all of our questions so that we know how to proceed with this license of occupation. As it stands now, we don't have enough information to make an informed decision. And it may be prudent to publish the question and answer somewhere that all people can see it. We ask for a schedule of the rollout if it's passed, notifying those affected in writing, giving plenty of time to comply with what is being requested under the bylaw. And we ask the council to review all fees that are being proposed to them and make sure that they're in line with other districts. Thank you.
Thank you, Logan, and both of you, I hear what you're saying. I hear your concerns, and I thank you for your comments and your understanding about what, we are trying to do the right thing here. You're asking some valid questions. I would ask that you leave them with Sean or submit them to us so that we know what all of those questions are. We are going to have a discussion later on. There are at least, based on some of the questions that we've already had, submitted to us and people calling us or sending us emails. There are at least a couple of items that I would like to see changed. And so we need to have a discussion about that. We will all take into consideration the comments that you've made. And I do sincerely thank you for coming forward on
Just-
behalf of,
Can I just make one comment?
yes, you can.
The reason why we want it published is so that because we're hearing things from so many different environments,
I understand.
like we're
It's
getting
hard to know
totally
what to believe
confused.
these days.
Exactly. I mean, you talk about this miscommunication on our part, but it's going both ways, right?
And there's been a lot of one-on-one and we appreciate
It-
that, the time
exactly.
taken, everyone's taken time to talk to us, but it's one-on-one now. They think they interpret it this way and we interpret it this way and we got a
Exactly.
different answer, so.
I will, the one comment that I will say, and it is a really unfortunate situation, that insurance companies are driving the decisions that we make in a huge way. Liability has just become an astronomical problem for all municipalities, and it's like common sense is flown out the window, but we must deal with the insurance companies and make our decisions based on, you know, what they're prepared to cover and what they're not prepared to cover, and you know, for everyone's safety. At any rate, I would thank you again. Ask if there are any questions specific to the presentation. I think we will have a conversation later on, and I do not want to get into a debate. Okay. Deputy Mayor Dayu, then Councillor Richards.
I'd like to reiterate my thanks. That was an insightful and very respectful way of presenting your concerns, and I'm confident everyone at this table appreciates that very, very much. So thank you very much for the manner in which you've brought your concerns. I hear you fully. My only question would be, in fact, for Madam Mayor, when we speak to the question of the bylaw later on in the meeting, will there be an opportunity to discuss a potential pause at that time? Or are you looking for simply a content conversation of the bylaw? Because I would like to have that conversation.
It had been my intention for us to look at content.
Mhm.
I mean, we're a group here. We can discuss if you raise a question or a concern. I mean, we'll discuss it and make a decision as a group on how we're going to move forward.
Okay, thank you. I do think some of the requests are quite reasonable and would appreciate
I.
the opportunity to
I.
discuss it. Thank you.
Thank
Councillor
you.
Richards.
Thank you.
I also want to thank you for coming out today. I actually want to thank you for creating the Facebook group that you did. When I first saw it, I was quite happy to see it. There's a lot of issues surrounding water access far beyond this one. Some of them in my perspective are much greater than this. And they are problems that this council needs to deal with in the future. It's a long list of priorities and solutions we need to come up with. Having said that, I understand the communication barriers that there are. I'm not, as council, really in a position to be commenting on Facebook to anyone. It's just not part of our decorum, so to speak, to do so. So when people contact me via Facebook Messenger, that's really to contact me personally, not to contact me as a councillor. Both of you have reached out along the proper channels, and that's wonderful. I also want you to know that I have read every single one of the comments on your group. I've also read every single one of your 35 questions. My hope is today that a lot of those questions will be answered in our discussion. And I'm hoping that by the end of our discussion today, you all feel a lot better about where this has come. I can say that it has been discussed for a number of years, and prior to being elected, it was a discussion on a number of occasions where I was throwing pillows at the TV screen because I was frustrated with some of the comments being made, and I didn't understand the whole picture. When you are behind this chair, you do see a lot more than what you realize is a problem for your particular property. And having said that, doing the research and understanding it a lot more from my perspective makes me understand why this is necessary. It doesn't mean to say that there aren't things within it that we need to further discuss. But that's true of any bylaw that comes through here. And council is always reviewing things that have been passed in the past to make changes that are just a part of our changing environment and other problems that come up that nobody's thought
Try
of
and
yet.
stick to the issue, Councillor Richards.
Yeah. So, I just want to say that I understand your frustration. And I understand that not everybody has the time to look at our agendas or to understand what's going on. But thank you for doing what you're doing for your community and for coming here to speak out today.
Thank you for listening to us.
Any other questions or comments? Do I have a mover and a seconder to receive the delegation? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Barry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved, council receives a presentation from Logan Percy and James Cooper regarding the township's policy for license of occupation for new and existing structures on township owned road, shore road allowances that are not adjacent to applicant's property.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
You'll be hearing from us. Yes, so at this point in time, and my apologies to those in the room who are here for other purposes, we are going to take a 10-minute break. Thank you. Okay, welcome back. Next up on the agenda is the building and bylaw enforcement report. Good morning, Mr. Moore.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Typical monthly activity report, status quo for the most part. One thing of note is that we did receive our new hybrid SUV, and it's proving out to be quite an asset. Beyond that, a few permits, not as much as last year again. Received over 21,000 in fees, construction value in excess of 2.8 million.
Well, that was short and sweet.
Short and sweet.
I'm hearing from a number of the municipalities that construction is definitely down this year. And I guess I'm attributing that to the cost of material and the cost of living these days. So I hope it's not a downward trend on the long term.
I don't believe it to be.
Any questions or comments for building and bylaw? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the report? Councillors Shortreed and Barry.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved that council receives report BLDG 1623 submitted by Greg Moore dated August 17th, 2023 for information.
All in favor? That's carried.
Perfect.
Thank you, sir. Next up is Park Recreation and Trails. Morning, Mr. Card.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
So first is a Recreation Committee update. I would look for a member of council to give us any updates there.
So these minutes are from our July 19th meeting. There was a couple of recommendations to council on that. A few recommendations to council on it. One being the Oxtongue Lake Community Center accessibility, and the other a policy or a procedure on how to handle donations that are received by members of the committee, and acceptable methods for payments like e-transfer, cash, etc. Otherwise, we had some really good events. The Oxtown Canada Day event was fantastic. The fishing derby was good. We have a lot of prizes that will be held until next year's event. We're looking forward to starting to work on the tree lighting ceremonies for the 3 awards. The Halloween event coming up is going to be exciting.
Hey, I'm sorry, a what?
The Halloween trunk event, trick or trunk.
It's all very exciting.
Yep, all very exciting. And, once again, though, last night was a pretty small group of us. We had quorum, but we're continuing to seek new members to join.
Well, luckily, we have a couple of names that have been submitted, so hopefully that will resolve that issue.
Yep.
I would ask staff, is there a policy in place on how we handle donations? Madam CAO?
No, normally what happens is if a volunteer is collecting money on behalf of the township, which is what has happened, the money gets turned over to finance and the receipt is given for the amount of money that's turned in. It's my understanding that there was a request for staff to commit to the funds going to a specific event in the future, which obviously staff can't do. And so the money has not yet been turned over.
I understand it was turned over last night.
Okay. But there is no existing policy.
I wonder if we could give some consideration to, getting something in writing about how that would be handled. Some thought over the next little while. Council, what is council thoughts on that? Councilor Berry?
Typically, hasn't things been held and put into a reserve for a certain purpose?
At council's direction.
Okay.
So staff, again, certainly we can look at a policy, but the policy won't include, because staff can't commit council to.
No, we expect that.
No. So that certainly we can look at something, but it won't include that.
Just something that outlines how it's to be handled, and that there can't be a commitment like that unless it comes to council. I also wonder, I know that we had put out a tender for accessibility for the Oxung Center in the past to put in a ramp and door at the back so that you could get into the upstairs. And I think that, if we can move forward to keep that in mind as a priority for an accessibility project, that we have another go at that. It's really, it's become quite apparent. There's a lot of aging people there, and there were some real challenges during Canada Day with, a couple of residents that couldn't get into the building, and I'd like to see us try again. We could, so if you could take that back to the committee, that the message has been heard. Anything that you'd like to contribute, Mr. Card, about the rec committee?
Just to echo that a lot of great events have happened over the past couple of months that have been well attended. And this newly formed committee has a lot of enthusiasm, and we've benefited greatly from their help with them. So things are going along really nicely, and it's really helped them to start to get an idea of where additions can be made and start to think about suggestions for changes or just enhancing certain things, or even ideas for things like advertising in the future. And so things have been going really well. And if I could, because I had an opportunity briefly to speak with to Mr. Thorne about the accessibility plans there, and there would need to also be consideration, just the building as a whole. There's quite a bit of considerations and requirements, and when we're talking about accessibility to the bathrooms and considering accessibility to the building, they're two pretty large projects that would link in together with the small bathrooms, and it may include requirements such as things like a lift and like a fulsome review of the entire space. So that may be something that needs to be considered as part of any sort of consideration of applications in the future.
You think there's enough room on those stairs for a lift?
No, and that's the problem is that it'd really be probably a renovation of the entire interior space. Because you'd need some sort of lift put in. We'd need to likely have an engineer who's knowledgeable in the subject matter, look at it and make recommendations on exactly what would be needed.
Consolidate the two bathrooms maybe into one so that they could become
Exactly.
accessible?
Yeah, because you've got the upstairs and the downstairs. Regulations typically require that alternate exits and entrances aren't used for accessibility purposes. So the idea of having somebody leave the building to access the exterior and then go back into the building to a bathroom might not meet the intent of that. So it'd be a big consideration.
Everything has to be so complicated. Well, let's put it on our radar and we'll talk about it during projects and priorities this fall. You know, it's Deputy Mayor Day.
Yeah, thanks. And if maybe as part of that investigation, if it's possible to find out if we can do it piecemeal so that, you know, if all we're able to afford maybe in 1 year is to get the ramp going out the back so that at least we do have an accessible entry on both levels. It's it's a start if we are allowed to take it that way, step by step. And the privy at the exterior, is that accessible? I can't recall.
The privy itself is accessible. Pathways that would lead to it for accessibility requirements across the grass is the next phase
Right.
along with the play structure.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Anything else on the rec committee update? Could I have a mover and a seconder to receive that? Deputy Mayor Day, Councillor Barry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved, council received the July 19th, 2023 Recreation Committee meeting minutes for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is your monthly report.
Yes, so through you, Mayor, of course, right in the height of operating season, as far as just kind of regular day-to-day operations go. But a couple of things that I would like to highlight that are upcoming, as well as some exciting new things in the township. Our Lower Fletcher Lake Landing project, which I mentioned in here, we were able to have a site meeting to determine construction schedules early this week. And just after the long weekend, September 5th, construction will start there. Communication has been posted on site as well as sent out to residents in the mail and by email to let everybody know that. And the contractor we're working with is certainly aware of the needs for people to continue to be able to access the site throughout construction and is very used to that type of process and amenable to it. So I just want to assure people who may be listening that steps have been taken to make it as seamless as a process as possible. And they won't need to be concerned about any sort of access, but there will of course be times that construction may cause some short delays, but that will be managed. There will be a need for some of the boats on site to just be moved out of the construction zone, and that's also been communicated. So looking forward to seeing that project starting up. Recently, we've been able to finalize the construction of the Stanhope tennis court here. So we have beautifully renovated courts here now available for use and seeing them get lots of use. So if any of you have a chance to have a look, I'd encourage you to do so. They're just fantastic. We also were able to put in the outdoor water bottle fill station there. So any users or passersby will be able to fill up their water bottle outside. And then, of course, we're heading into the fall color planning season at the Dorset Tower. So just getting plans in place for our typical traffic control procedures. And we do plan to have our advanced ticketing system in place again this year. So having meetings to get that in place and up and running, which was very successful last year. And we plan to run the same way this year. But those are all the highlights.
Thank you. Any questions on the activity report? Deputy Mayor Dayu?
It's not a question so much as a comment, but in previous years, when work has been done at launches and landings and the information has been circulated, I've had such good responses from folks saying how much they appreciated just knowing what was going to happen, even if their lives weren't fully disrupted. Just the courtesy of that advance notice was greatly appreciated. So thanks for continuing to do that so well.
Thank you.
Could I then, Councillor Berry?
Just as a ward rep, I just want you to know the appreciation in the community down here in regards to all the work that's been done at the rec center outside has been really well taken by the community, especially with the water bottle and the tennis courts.
Thank you.
Could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the activity report? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Short Reed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Short Reed, be it resolved, council receives report PRT 1323 regarding June and July 2023 monthly activity submitted by Chris Carr dated August 17th, 2023.
All in favor? That's carried. And your last item is the appointment of a bylaw enforcement officer for the water trails.
Yes, so this would just be an administrative process allowing the authorization of our new senior trail technician / bylaw officer to be appointed as a bylaw officer to enforce bylaws associated with the Haliburton Highlands Water Trails Program.
So do we have a resolution at this time or just a bylaw later on? Okay. That's information. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. Next up is environmental business. Welcome, Melissa.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
So first is your activity report.
Thank you through. Along with Parks and Rec, a busy time, obviously, for the Environment Department and landfills. So in the administrative side, we've had an exciting, I guess, development. We finally have received an agreement for the Blue Box transition. So that's just in the review process, and I will be going through legal review. So we will hopefully have that back to council shortly. It has met, it has addressed quite a few of the concerns that we had. There's still some that do require clarification. And July 1st has been the first transition date for that program. So a number of communities have now transitioned to the new regulations. And that seems to have gone fairly well from what I've heard from the organizations involved. So start to see more, and you've probably seen in the news a little bit of a promotion of that and communities talking about changes that have been made to accommodate that. We continue to work the countywide, the single tier waste management review is still ongoing, and I've been having meetings with Camium in regard to the options for Hawk Lake. The Maple Lake Operations Center has been very busy. We've had a good test of it a couple of times with some fairly major storms that have come through and large volumes of water in a short period of time, which in new construction can be a bit of trying to it. So we have addressed a couple of issues that came up just with some washout and that sort of thing, and they have been addressed by our contractor, and seems to be holding up very well, and been busy with lots of questions and requests for information from residents. And not only the site has been tested, but McPhail Road has had a couple of instances where we've just had some minor service disruptions with trees on the road, trees on hydro lines, and that sort of thing, and staff and
worked with fire department, public works, to ensure that those disruptions are as minimal as possible, and to provide the public with alternatives, if there are disruptions. And traffic counts, just following our trends, back to sort of our traditional numbers with a slight increase over time. That's about all.
I must say, I have received a huge number of compliments on how the Maple Lake landfill is working now. It's a much easier, for everyone to use, and it's just kudos to you and everyone that's been involved in that project. I think the only negativity associated with that project is the increased traffic on the road. Which is something that we knew we would have, but that's a different concern. Any questions on the environmental activity report? Can I have a mover and a seconder to receive it? Councillors Barry and Short Reed.
Moved by Council Barry, second by Council Short Reed, be it resolved, Council receives report EB 2123 submitted by Melissa Murray and dated August 17th, 2023 for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Next item is the request to purchase a sole source bin.
Thank you, Mayor.
Go ahead.
So this is a request to council in compliance with our purchasing policy, and for purchase, we expect to be over $10,000 from a sole source, and this is custom designed roll-off bin for collection of waste, and it's something we've been looking at for quite a while to try and find options for, and haven't found anything readily available on the market, and so now have approached a fabricator about a custom design to meet our particular needs. So this will be just a one bin purchase to see if this design, we anticipate it to meet our needs, but obviously with any new design, we want to see how it works before we look at a larger purchase.
Questions or comments on the acquisition? Councillor Barry, then Councillor Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Just a question, what was the original price of the non-customized bin?
So this bin isn't quite comparable to what we have. The bare bin style that has been in use vary between $10,000 and $14,000 depending on the price of steel really at the time. So the quoted price we have is for a heavier duty bin, so heavier metal and heavier and shorter distances between beams than we traditionally have purchased.
Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Just looking at the picture in your report, reminds me of the success that you reported a couple of years ago in having covered bins that stop snow and rain from coming in. So is that a potential option for this one as well, to have it covered to avoid those excess weights?
Yes, so this would be a entirely covered bin. So it's a peaked roof, with doors on either side. So the doors slide open, but when the doors are closed, it would be entirely covered.
Any other questions? Councillor Barry.
Just as a review of that discussion, a lot of that discussion was in regards to weight, correct? So with less water especially on the fiber material, it's going to decrease the costs still of transportation. Correct?
From our money lady. Who's keeping an eye on the money?
This design is actually particularly for waste. And so because we don't pay by weight for our waste, that's not the same consideration, but snow and water in the waste is an issue, just as far as if there's water, in the winter and snow, it's creating difficulty emptying bins and difficulty managing them at the site. So that's an advantage there. In this case, covering obviously keeps smell and bears, birds, raccoons, those sorts of vermin out of the bins.
Any other questions, comments? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to approve this acquisition? Councillor Short Reed, Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Short Reed, second by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be resolved, council received report EB 2223 regarding request for sole source purchasing of a custom design waste bin submitted by Melissa Murray dated August 17th, 2023. And the council authorized the purchase of one custom design covered 40-yard roll-off bin from Precision Waste Systems Limited in the approximate amount of $15,500 plus applicable taxes via sole source procurement.
All in favor? That's carried. Thanks so much, Melissa.
Thank you.
Next is Public Works. Welcome, Mr. Thorne.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
So first up is an update on the Dorset Rec project. We're
Yeah,
all
so-
ears.
Yeah, so we're pretty excited to announce that we will be holding a meeting on Monday with the contractor. Just to go over the initial project, signing contract, and basically when that is finished, we will be heading straight to the Dorset Rec Center to get started. Their first day of construction will be Monday.
Yay. I'm a little disappointed because I think council generally understood that things were going to get started right after we awarded the contract last month. So to see no activity there was kind of disappointing for everybody. But we're going ahead. We've got a start date, and I'm really, really glad to hear that construction is actually going to get underway. Any questions? Comments? I guess that's just the news we wanted to hear. Music to our ears. Do we have a resolution for that, or that's just information? Okay, next up is the your report on the electronic speed sign.
Yeah, so as council may remember, we did decide to go forward with a digital sign that would track some information on North Shore Road. This is a collaboration between the county and the township with some resident input on locations. The county did put out one sign on North Shore Road. From the report, you can see in the picture where it was placed was basically at the end of this straight stretch right down here, just past the office. Based on the information that was collected, you can see that essentially the sign didn't really do anything when it was in stealth mode. Although it collected a lot of great data, it really didn't slow anything down. Once the sign was turned on to display mode where incoming traffic would be able to see it, it considerably, slowed traffic down that 26%, give or take. But on the outbound side, when it was in display mode, it really wasn't a noticeable amount of only 6%. So it was great to see the sign there. It did collect a great amount of data, including vehicle traffic, which is helpful for future planning. But overall, it'd be staff's thought process that the sign was great. It did slow traffic down, but that road is signed with speed signs, all the yard signs that are in there, and essentially it doesn't slow traffic down. What we need there is more input from OPP, more patrols to slow that down. Changing the speed, I don't think would change that. The traffic speed, I don't think would change by lowering the speed to 40 kilometers an hour. However, with this report, like I said, I would like to share that with the OPP in hopes that we may get some more enforcement. And in the next month or so, you will also see a speed analysis report come back for all of Algonquin Highlands roads, which all the data was just completed last week, and they're compiling it and putting it together.
Questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Yeah, love the data. Really, really interesting to break that down. And I love the term stealth mode. Gotta say, it's what wonderful. We don't use the
Just
word
doesn't
stealth
work.
often enough in our municipality. Well, but no, the stealth mode didn't work, but there was a definitive response when those numbers started to flash. And I thought that was really, really interesting. My sense would be to take a multi-pronged approach. Society often only really responds when they're being
pounded from a number of different angles with a similar message. And if it means keeping up the flashing speed sign and getting more support from OPP now that we've got some evidence to provide, and reducing the speed limit to 40, maybe a combination of those things will keep people safer on the roads, because and we've seen people do whiz through there really, really fast, and there are kids and bikes.
One problem is that the sign doesn't belong to us. And do you have any idea what the cost of one of those signs is?
To purchase a sign? No, I don't. And as this conversation's evolving, I was just thinking there that something that I could do is reach out to the county and ask if they'd be willing to share the sign again on another location on North Shore Road, but we're kind of held to what their plans are when the sign's available to us. So
I just wonder about investigating the actual purchase of one for ourselves, instead of always having to rely on the county. I mean, there are a number of roads where we have people, I know that Braylock is another road where there's been a lot of concerns raised, and other roads where we've got problems. Just a consideration of, like, at least investigating. I see somebody suggesting it might be $6,000 or more, but for you to maybe check that out and include it in an item that we may consider purchasing, depending on our other priorities at the time. I hear what you're saying about the multi-prong approach, and which is one of the reasons why we went from 80 to 50. I'm not really convinced that going from 50 to 40 is going to make a big difference. If people aren't paying attention to 50, it's not going to make any difference to go down to 40. And now we do have a process that we need to go through, that I think there's a percentage of people on a given road that need to request it change, or am I wrong there?
I would have to look that up. I'm not honestly sure unless Adam knows.
well, to change the speed, I mean, that would be entirely up to council to change the speed, whether one person asked or 100 people asked. I mean, that's entirely up to council. When
I seem to recall something a few years back when we were considering that we needed a percentage of the people that were living on that given road. Now I'm here seeing heads going. Madam CAO.
I believe that was if you changed it to 30, because 30 then becomes a community
Safety zone.
Yes.
Councillor Richards, then Councillor Barry.
I think there are certain sections of North Shore Road that are more concerning than others. When I drive down North Shore Road, and I mean, I think we all know I have a nice fast car, I drive slowly because I feel like I can't see what may be coming at me, and I don't want my car to get hurt. Never mind hurt other people. But I think there are sections of that road that we may want to consider being either classed as a community safety zone, or as the growth in the community continues, we may want to be looking at things like crosswalks and sidewalks in certain areas of North Shore.
Well, you don't want to spend any money, do you?
No, I'm just suggesting that, as the community changes in that area, it may be something worth looking at for the future.
One of my concerns is that it is listed as an alternate route. If there is a stoppage on 35 or 118, and that that brings the kind of traffic that we're really not looking for on that road. I mean, it's just not the best. But Councillor Barry.
Given the state of some of North Shore Road, I would hope that people are going slower, because it is a pretty big washboard in some areas. But I sort of feel similarly to Councillor Dayu in regards to a multi-pronged approach in regards to possibly lowering it to 40 and having more police presence. I think given the fact that we are discussing the licenses of occupation, I think that it's possible that the increased use and crossing of the roadway could increase as well. Those are just my thoughts.
Mr. Thorne.
Thank you. So we do have to consider Highway 118 right now isn't in the greatest of shape due to the construction. So I think you're seeing that increase across North Shore to get away from that. having said that, when we first came to talk about the speed on North Shore Road, I did look up a community safe zone for 40 kilometers, and that again has its own challenges, but we would have to by bylaw put that in place and set it up for location. So where the signage was actually going to go from one location to another. And that is just simply that if council wanted to have that done, it would have to be identified as to what road, what location, the spacing between each sign. Definitely not something that's impossible by any means. It's just, it'd be something that we would have to look into further and come back to show what that would look like. Like I said, there is a speed analysis report coming forward. And just in the brief discussions I had regarding that with the contractor, it was going to be a recommendation that all of most of Algonquin Highlands roads could actually do with the speed increase due to the structure of the road. So that our roads are built very well. Although the surface of North Shore Road currently is not in the greatest shape due to the
Half of it.
yes. But you will see in that report, it does speak to increasing road speed. Now, that's not the intent of the report. That's not the intent of staff, was to increase the road speed, but it is good information to have that shows that there'll be portions of Algonquin Highlands roads that where we may have seen a lot of complaints or where a road should have been signed as lower speed, in fact, show safety that it could be increased. So before we go too far forward in looking at community safety zones and things like that, I think we should be waiting for that report to come back.
Okay, well, I do look forward to that report and maybe a little bit more information to inform council on community safety zones, so we can, kind of do a point of comparison for absolutely certain sure. I would like us to send the information off to the OPP and ask for increased patrols. We can't force them to do that, but I know that the acting detachment commander has been definitely open to suggestions about that. I've spoken to him several times about both North Shore Road and Braylock, because there's been concerns raised about that. We'll go to Councillor Barry and then Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Just in speaking with the police, or maybe you could answer this, Adam, but is there an increase in fines based on the speed? So if we kept it at 50, would the fines be different than if they were at 40? I know they would be different in a community safety, but I just wonder in regards to the 50 versus 40.
So through you, Mayor, without it being a community safety, the fine would be set to whatever the Highway Traffic Act. So if you were doing 20 over and it was the discretion of the police officer, I mean, I think that would be up to them.
Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Thanks. I look forward to that report that you've just been speaking of. Could you clarify kindly, when you say the road could be bumped up in speed, are you referring exclusively to the ability of the physical road to handle additional speed rather than a conglomerate of safety plus road condition considerations? Is that my understanding?
Yes, with you, Mayor. When they did the analysis of the road, they would be looking at quite a few different things on the road, curvature of the road, build of the road, tree overhang, canopies, the amount of driveways. There's quite an array that goes into the metrics of how they do their speed analysis. And just the overall consensus when the contractor reached out to say that the initial work was done, they asked what our thoughts were on increasing the road speed, because there was quite a few sections that could have an increase done to them. At the time of that email, it was not the intention of staff or council to increase it.
Carry on.
And a question about speed bumps. Do you think if we folded physical speed bumps into a potential multi-pronged approach that could have an impact, or given that it is an alternate road, is that potentially not possible for North Shore, or would we have to check?
Yeah, through you, Mayor, I would have to look into what that looked like for us. I know in the wintertime, obviously, we wouldn't be able to have them, but actually I was just in Sudbury this past weekend, and they have permanent speed bumps, and they're quite the hump in the road, actually very uncomfortable. So it would be something that we would have to look into.
I would almost think that we might be better served by the temporary style of, there's the ones that you can lay across the road that, so we don't run into, road maintenance problems in the end. And to me, there's some roads that could handle speed bumps and others not necessarily suited. I've got to say that I'm not convinced that moving from 50 to 40 is going to make a difference, but I am more than willing to be, to have my mind changed about that, based on the information that we get. Councillor Richards.
Just on that traffic analysis for further clarity, is it also looking at pedestrian traffic that uses the road, or is it solely looking at vehicular traffic?
So the speed analysis was for vehicle speed, and it would be doing the analysis of the road itself in general, like what the road offers in a sense to the traveling public.
So it doesn't consider pedestrian use of the road?
No, because our roads are strictly for vehicles, although people do walk on them and we do, obviously allow that kind of stuff. There's no sidewalks, so our roads are built for traffic.
Right. But we don't have, other than maybe in not all areas, a shoulder for people to walk on, and people walk. That's what
For sure. And a lot of our roads are not, some of our roads, just in inheriting them over the years, are not wide enough for a shoulder. The road edge goes right to the edge of the road before it goes down into the ditch.
Yeah. So is that something that we could change in the analysis to have that added, or is that not something they do?
I would have to look back further on to see exactly how it captures pedestrian, walking, bicycling, things of that nature, and to see where that lands in the analysis. I can reach out to them and ask that. And when that report comes forward, make sure that there's a section that could speak to that.
Adam, one question I've got is whether or not, I know that the county has adopted a share of the road policy. Do you recall whether Algonquin Highlands as an individual municipality adopted a share of the road policy?
I'm sorry, at this time, I wouldn't be able to answer that. I'm not too sure.
There's your answer. Okay, so I think we are all in agreement that the information be passed on to the OPP, that we ask them to have increased patrols. I will speak to them during our next CPAC meeting, which I think is coming up fairly soon. So, we'll kind of hit them from both angles, from, if they're getting information from you and from me. And in the meantime, you've heard kind of what we're looking for information coming forward. Look forward to your next report.
Thank you.
Could I have a mover and a seconder to receive this report? Deputy Mayor Dayu and Councillor Shortreed. Sorry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, council acknowledge report PW 1823 regarding electronic speed sign information submitted by Adam Thorne dated August 17th, 2023, and the council concurs with staff recommendations to share the data collected with the Minden OPP detachment.
All in favor? That's carried. So you're also seeking agreement on roadside mowing. Thanks, folks. Sorry you had to wait as long as you did, but what better way to spend a Thursday morning than listening to council?
When life stops being an education, you stop breathing.
Yeah. Thanks. Mowing agreement?
Yeah, this is just the mowing agreement that was in place for this year and next year, 2-year contract with Cox Farm Mowing.
So no resolution under the bylaws. Okay, thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
Next up is our trustee fire chief. Good morning. Chief French.
Morning, Mayor and Council.
So you want to tell us about the summit that you attended?
Definitely. I had the opportunity, we were invited by the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office to attend the Operation Safer Summit, which took place in Vaughan. Over the last year, we've had 133 fatalities within the province of Ontario. In the last 10 years, we haven't had more than 87. So there's a definite concern with the rise in numbers. So they brought together stakeholders from all different agencies and that to speak. And there's along with approximately 400 delegates from the fire service to look at the marketing and the presentations and stuff like that. For example, one of the best received presenter was from Mad Canada. Their most impactful advertisement they have is that one commercial that lines up the glasses that you're looking at. And they feel that that's done the most impact for affecting people drinking and driving from that commercial. So the fire service is looking at doing more severe ads, more live ads or related to the issues. As a fire department, we've always been known as the good agency. We go to a place and they don't have working smoke alarm, and we go and put one up for them. That's been going on since 1997. It's been required to have working smoke alarms within your house. And after the outcome of the summit, that's got to change. We have to go in there, and if a person doesn't have a working smoke alarm as required, we should be ticketing them. And there is means to do that through the provincial offenses, which is delegated under my authority as a fire chief, and they'd be fined for not having a working smoke alarm. We also, the other alternative or additional aspect we can do, and I hope to bring it forward in the fees for services change, is if we do put a smoke alarm up, that they pay for that, because they're getting a $75 smoke alarm for us at no charge because they neglected to follow provincial offense since 1997. And they just got to be fortunate they didn't lose a family member or anything else. So they got to be accountable for action. So that's what's changing going forward. September 28th, they're having what they call Saved by the Beat. It's going to be an action day across the province. We work with Chad to put appropriate advertising out for it in that. And I think it is time. It's time for us to make an impact with all of our places, because we average putting up probably 20 smoke alarms a year, just from going to places that medical calls. Every time we go to a medical call, our fire service checks to make sure they have a working smoke alarm to ensure that they do. And if they don't, we're putting it up. But that shouldn't be at the expense of our taxpayers when they aren't following the provincial regulations. So we will be bringing something forward in the fall. It was very beneficial. They're looking at having it again next year. And they did have a lot of communications aspects from there. They had various agencies like Surrey Fire. They have a very proactive program. They were there speaking. In FPA Statistics Canada, it was well attended. So very beneficial. And I thank you for the opportunity to attend.
Any questions or comments? Okay, could I have a mover to seconder to receive that report? Deputy Mayor Barry, Councillor Barry and Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Councillor Shortreed, be it resolved, Council receives report FD 1223 in accordance with the Township's conference policy regarding attending the Operation Safer Summit submitted by Michael French dated August 17th, 2023.
All in favor? That's carried. And next is your monthly activity report.
Yeah, there's a couple of things highlighting is we've been working with Kate Levitt of the county and doing our RFP for the fire master plan. She's been a terrific asset for us, and hopefully we'll have that coming forward soon to get the RFP out for the master fire plan. All 4 townships are working together to reduce costs. So it's nice to see the cooperation between the various places. I've met with key stakeholders within the county, including Emergency Management Ontario, to prepare for a potential evacuation if we were to have a large forest fire situation. And it's being proactive, which I think is really good. And if there is a big fire situation, we've come to the conclusion that it's going to be reliant on the OPP to do any evacuations because their medical and fire service be tied up with the incident. So we're still in the MC stages of it, but I think it's very positive going forward. And the two other things I'd like to bring forward is we received the hybrid vehicle there this week. As a result, the vehicle that I was driving is located in Oxton Lake. So their 20-year-old pickups, half ton's been upgraded to a 3/4 ton that can accommodate the trailer and that. And I now have the Toyota RAV4 hybrid. Chad's been great. He's put it on Facebook, Twitter, and I've been getting comments back on how proactive it was, seeing that the Township of Algonquin Highlands was supporting the hybrid product. And I think we've always had that support from you as council with other items like our extrication equipment and our ice augers and things like that. Yes.
Councillor Barry.
Is there a charging station in Oxton?
The one we have is a RAV4. It's not the electric charge one. It's the hybrid one. It isn't. And multiple reasons, but one of the reasons was, for example, we had the car accident up in the park. We were there for 14 hours. That vehicle got there with the lights and all that running. It would never maintain a charge. This is self-sufficient. The overall operation is 4.5 liters per 100. So that's a really efficient vehicle. So I'm very pleased with that aspect of it.
Did you have a question, Councillor Richards?
I'm wondering, when it comes to like forest fire management, and if we were to have an extremely large forest fire here, how beneficial would it be to you if the MNR were able to have one of the water bombers stationed at our airport?
We are so covered by MNR, it's unbelievable. For example, when all the fires are up north, the only response place they had was one here at the Stanhope Airport. They have a fast attack team that is helicopter oriented. So what's coming out of there, they don't station a bomber there. They station the water bombers at Muskoka Airport. But by air, that'd probably be 10 minutes. So we're very, very well covered. And MNR has been super. They work cooperatively with us for anything forest fire oriented. And we're looking at some other programs too going forward, fire smart programs for educating the people around the area, working jointly with them. Anytime we have a public event, along with our association attending, normally the MNR brings their public education trailer too. So I think we've got a great relationship with them.
Any other questions for Chief French? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive his monthly activity report? Councillor Richards and short read.
Moved by Councillor Richards, second by Councillor Short Read. Be it resolved, Council receives report FD 1323 regarding monthly activities submitted by Michael French dated August 17th, 2023.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, sir. Who is that? Next up is finance. Good morning, Madam Treasurer. It is still morning.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. I just have the account summary report for this meeting, and it represents the payments of payables and payroll and so forth from July 12th to August 8th for council's review and comment.
Are there any questions on the accounts payable? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Richards.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved that council has reviewed the expenditures incurred as set out in the account summary report TT 2123 in the total amount of $1,014,309.73 and hereby approves payment as same.
All in favor? That's carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is planning business. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I just checked it off. Oh, dealt with that. Okay, under administrative business, Heritage Museum minutes. Anybody want to speak to that?
Speak to that. We haven't, these are from June.
These are from June, I believe. Basically, the committee hasn't met since July, so these are sort of old minutes, but the museum itself has been open for business, and I believe there's been, every time I've been by, there's been a good amount of people during their days of the week. They have done an outreach so far in regards to the county fair, the farmers market, and then their next item is Bookapalooza, which is in September. And I think I've already given my regards to staff and gratitude for the work that they've done in regards to the garden and the compost bins and everything. And yeah, I don't have anything more to update, as this was a while ago.
Any questions on the museum minutes? One thing that may come back to the museum in light of one of the recommendations from the cultural committee, I believe that committees work together, cooperate as much as we possibly can. There has been some discussion at the airport committee about use of the tents that have been used for Heritage Day. Now I understand that the tents actually belong to the Friends of the museum, but I'm also wondering where the museum stands with regards to, any reestablishment of maybe a smaller Heritage Day or a continuance of Heritage Day. Is Heritage Day, do you think, done, or what's the consideration there?
I don't think that it is finished. I think that it is probably, I would think this calendar year, probably in the fall, we will discuss what the next steps are. I don't think it's finished. It's a case of recruitment in a lot of the ways.
So, I guess I'm sure, because I've spoken to the chair of the committee about the issue of tents, that will come up at your next meeting, and I hope that there's some positive approach to it, and if there isn't going to be a continuance of Heritage Day to the extent that we used to have it, maybe we could acquire some of the tents that belong to the Friends of the Museum, because it's just a shame that they're just kind of sitting there right now. Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the museum minutes? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved that council receives the June 19th, 2023 Stanhope Heritage Museum meeting minutes.
All in favor? That's carried. And next up is Mr. O'Callaghan and planning business. And the first item is a discussion about the licenses of occupation. I understand you have some comments to make about that.
Yes, yeah, thank you. Yeah, and some of my comments will be a repeat of what you addressed this morning, but I think it's important just to state it again at this point. So
particularly as you're the one with the planning degree.
Yeah, so I'd like to start off with a brief clarification that the license of occupation does not apply to all docks within Algonquin Highlands. This policy applies only to private structures that are occupying a township road allowance or shore road allowance where there is a township maintained road, not a county road, a provincial highway, or a private road between a private property and the water. The intention of this policy is to help those property owners in this specific situation so that they can best utilize the water and improve, replace, or build new infrastructure on this township land, as currently we cannot issue building permits for such structures. A number of other concerns with the policy have been raised, which I'll now address. The first is to do with the $5 million liability insurance. So through discussion and collaboration with the CAO, it was confirmed that $5 million is an industry standard, and it is an appropriate level of insurance to require for private infrastructure that's located on public land, given the level of risk to the township. The $500 annual fee, as council will recall, it was discussed that this is it is reasonable to expect that the beneficiaries of this policy cover a majority of the costs of administering it, as it will only benefit the individual property owners applying for the license. It was also a result of the service delivery review, which was completed by the County of Haliburton, where a recommendation was made that planning departments of the lower tier townships align their planning fee structures for consistency across the county. This was supported by councils across the county. Concerns have been raised that we are in violation of the Public Lands Act with this policy. The township is not in violation of the Public Lands Act. The public land that is referred to within that act is a defined term, and it specifically states it's for crown lands, school lands, and clergy lands, but does not apply to township or municipal shore road allowances or road allowances. Questions have been raised with respect to liability for these situations versus a typical shore road allowance with no road between the property and the water. We have been advised that there is a greater risk to the township where there is a township maintained road versus one not being present. The Municipal Act does require municipalities to keep a highway in a state of repair that is reasonable in the circumstances and provides statutory defenses to municipalities if it did not know or could not have reasonably been expected to know about the state of repair of a highway, which municipal road allowances and shore road allowances are considered a highway under the Municipal Act. Questions about, can anyone now apply for a license of occupation in front of my property? The answer to that is no. Only the property owner that is directly across the road from the shoreline will be able to apply for a license of occupation in this situation. And finally, concerns about being taxed at a waterfront rate already. The Municipal Property Assessment Corporation is responsible for individual property assessment through the province of Ontario. They have advised, while yes, properties with a township road running between their property and the water are assessed as a waterfront property, the assessment is adjusted to reflect that. Property owners that are concerned with the current assessment of their property should reach out directly to the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation to best address their questions. And finally, it's important to remember that this policy can be reviewed by council at a later date and revised as necessary. Staff will also be monitoring the policy and will report back to council with recommendations to further improvement as needed. And thankfully, we are not the first to implement such a policy, and there are a number of example policies from other townships dealing with similar situations that we can use as a valuable resource in the future when reviewing. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Sean. I wonder if you can make them available to us all and maybe post them
Certainly.
on our website, just because that it does respond to some of the questions. I would ask, do you have this list of questions?
No, I was not aware of that.
Well, it's all yours.
Okay.
I'll submit that to you later because they did leave them with me, and I do think that we need to give some regard to responding to those questions. I see, based on your attachment to the report, that you have made changes that we had recommended.
That is correct.
Which I thank you for. There are a couple of things, I'm sure that there's lots of things that people want to address, but maybe over and above these things, despite your comments about the industry standard for the $5 million liability, it's still my feeling that given that, we keep hearing arguments, well, how many claims have there been? How many incidents have there been? I would like council to consider the possibility of reducing the liability from 5 million to 2 million, at least to start with. I think that, that will show a sign of good faith. There seems to be some challenges in some of people getting insurance. Now, there are some clarifications I think that are needed because there are folks that don't seem to understand, or insurance companies that don't seem to understand that there's really little difference between a license of occupation and a lease, because the insurance companies are saying, no, you must have a lease, and they are technically the same from what I understand from Sean. I'd also, one of the other major issues that has been raised with me, other than the fact that people don't like this or have been caught off guard, which is unfortunate, the fact that we're looking for renewal every year. And I'm not sure that that's necessary. I mean, it really, I see the need for a trial period or a review period, but we've talked about a review after a period of time. I'm not sure that we need to, if we are satisfied that we can enter into an agreement with the party who wishes to do, to legitimize their structures or build structures, that we should be able to enter into an agreement that's a little bit longer than a year. And we're asking for $500 every year and going through a process every year is more work for you. It's more work for everybody and more cost to the applicant. So I'd like to see us consider a longer term. Those are just things, my initial thoughts based on some of the things that I've heard. So I look to comments, questions. The one thing that I do want to say, if we in fact decide that we are going to put a pause on this for a period of time while we provide the answers to these questions, because there are 42 of them. And I'm sure we've been asked some of them, but I am also sure we haven't been asked all of them, that I would like to see those questions responded to and the information put out there in some kind of a Q&A, or, people can clearly see, here's what we're talking about. We will need to rescind the policy that we approved, and then reintroduce it, once we're satisfied that we've provided the information that's needed, because we did approve it and it was to go into effect today. So we'll have to rescind it if that is our decision, that we want to put a pause on things while we gather a little bit more information and make sure that information is out there. So comments, questions, thoughts? Councillor Richards.
In regards to the insurance question, I did some research in Minden, Dysart,
Would you
Highlands
speak to
East.
the chair?
Oh, sorry. And Highlands East, and Lake of Bays as well. Everybody's different. Minden's got 5 million, Lake of Bays is 2 million, and actually Dysart and Highlands East are not indicating anything about insurance. I know there has been a question out there about, is a waiver of liability acceptable without the insurance requirement? So I'm wondering if it is.
I couldn't say 100%, but I would think we would be much better protected with a policy in place versus a waiver.
We can add that to one of our questions. Madam CAO.
I know in recent discussions with our solicitor that those really, while they're nice to have, they really don't hold any water.
The waiver.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Barry.
One of the questions I have and has been asked of me is in regards to, I believe in the policy or in the bylaw, it states that this license of occupation would be non-transferable. And I wonder how that works in regards to a property has already had an agreement in place in regards to the license of occupation. They sell the house, and how does that get translated in real estate and also with the next owner, and how that would further be possibly transferred if it was a case of there was a loss in the family and it is an inherited property. How would that work? And I think that's something that we haven't maybe talked about and something to consider.
Comments?
Yeah, so the council did direct in a previous draft that the agreements do be transferable. However, the new owners would have to contact the township to update the policy or update the names on the agreement that are registered on title. So it's a possibility that it can be transferred.
But
We just
without
need
having
be-
to go through the whole process all over again.
Correct. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Would that only be with the family member?
No, that
Like-
would be if the property sold to a different party, if any change in ownership occurs.
Okay, and one more.
Yep.
How would that work in regards to the value? What is your estimate thoughts on the value of the property with a license of occupation?
I mean, we would have to talk to a real estate professional to know, but I would assume that a property with a registered agreement in place to utilize the waterfront would be more valuable to a purchaser versus one that does not.
Councillor Shortreed.
I just have a question about straight line projections. Only because of the issues we've had in the past. So when we have a straight line projection issue, are you going to be the one that determines the projections?
I would anticipate that we would deal with it in similar fashion that we do with short road allowance closure, where there's a deviated line required, that we would require the sign off of both neighboring parties.
An agreement with council.
Yeah, and ultimately these do go to council for approval, so.
Okay.
Deputy Mayor Dayu, then Councillor Richards.
I am a bit worried about the question of leases versus licenses of occupation, because I do foresee that one insurance company is going to respond to that question with one answer and another insurance company is going to respond with another answer. And I imagine it's not up to us to dictate to them that it's the same. Legal
Dictate to an
document.
insurance company?
Precisely. So I just wonder, what might we be able to do there? Short of asking the applicant to go to a different insurance company, I'm hesitant to throw something into effect without kind of understanding the implications.
I believe Sean might have a response for you.
Yes. Yeah,
We
so
might have to dig a bit further.
so I did do some further research on the difference between a license of occupation versus a lease. They are very similar, but there are a couple significant differences that council needs to consider. The first being that a lease could be subleased to a third party, whereas a license cannot. The second being a lease cannot exceed 21 years per the Planning Act, whereas a license could be in place for an indefinite period of time. So right now our license is only valid for 10 years, but once this policy is up and running, should council see fit, we could extend that beyond the 10-year or the 21-year timeframe, should council wish.
So there are actually benefits to a license of occupation as
Correct.
opposed to a lease.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have a follow-up
I
question?
do, but I guess be that as it may, I'm not sure all the insurance companies are going to see it the same way. So that's still kind of the outstanding piece a little bit.
But which way do you go? I mean, you're still, it sounds to me from what I have heard so far that the license of occupation is the better way to go. And it's the standard that's been used by other municipalities who have obviously researched this in advance as well. I don't know how we would ever decide between the two if there's going to be different insurance companies that have, different approaches. Which one do we take? And Sean has said that, he's more than willing to speak to any insurance company to provide clarification, should that be needed.
Yeah. So we'll see. And then to the question of the pause, I, for one, am entirely in favor of taking a look at this list in greater detail, understanding the lived experience of the folks who are considering the implications for their lives and their lifestyles and their properties, and seeing which of these questions we can reiterate, because I know a lot of them have been answered in the past, but maybe could come to one central location, and maybe others that we haven't considered. I'd be really curious to read the list myself. I've not seen it, and to see what we might do there. So I'm fully in favor of taking a minute to a sober second thought to take a look at the list. And
the list will be provided to Sean, who will provide us with answers. And so we will see both the list and the answers. Other thoughts to that recommendation?
I support that as well. I think that not only going over the list with Sean going over the list and actually taking that information back. I also think that this is an opportunity through speaking with several of the taxpayers and today's delegation to really have a greater effort on our part in regards to public education on how it rolls out, and maybe having a timeline of when it rolls out, maybe a little bit further instead of it being so quick. Maybe it's a case of people are given, especially just a longer time to basically understand all the rules and regulations, deciding whether or not they're going to enter into one or not, and financially
and that they know what the consequences
Yeah.
are if they are not going to enter into an agreement.
Yeah. So anyway, that's where I sit.
Counselor Shortreed, then Counselor Richards.
And it's basically the end of summer, so by extending it a little bit. I don't think it really is gonna be imperative to anybody, right?
Madam CAO.
Just so staff are sort of on the same page, is there sort of a timeline around the pause? When would we bring that back to council?
As soon as we can get answers to these questions. I know that there have been questions that have already come to Sean, and then there's this list, and I mean, I just had it handed to me, so I don't know what's on it. You know, none of us do, except for some of the questions that were raised by the delegation. So I would say, you know, we need to give sufficient time to Sean to respond to these questions. And I think we probably will need to determine how we're going to, I mean, we want the information to be broadly posted. There's maybe some information that we can't respond to. That's not our place to or respond to, but you know, I'm not sure how much time would be required. Look, it depends on what the questions are. Hard to say, you know, I mean, how much research or, you know, work is involved in this.
Yeah, I guess I'm sort of trying to get a idea of, is the pause to answer the questions and provide the information to the public? So are we talking a month? Or are we talking next year?
I am not interested in waiting until we have been putting this off for a long time. We've talked about it. I think that our best path is to give ourselves enough time to respond to these questions, to put the information out there to the public, and then agree whether we're going to move on or not. But to leave it like this has been going on since 2013, and I think we need to decide where we're going to land. We've always all agreed that it's a step that we need to take. There is a great percentage of our population that believes that it's the right step for us to take. You know, let's just give like, I don't know, 2 months part of today's meeting that we don't actually have on our agenda. So does that sound reasonable? Councilor Richards?
Yeah, I think that sounds reasonable. One of the other things that I think people don't understand, because it's being overly simplified to be, okay, if you're on the other side of the road, this applies to you. And that's not necessarily true across the board. It's where the other side of the road is a municipal shoreline.
Well, and
some
that's
people
the-
do own the land,
That's the
right?
point that Sean made.
Yeah.
You know, what roads it does apply to and doesn't.
Well, it's not just about the road itself, but sometimes it is a road, but they still do own the other side of the shoreline already. And individual properties here are really what is differing from one to the next. So you can't just throw out there that this is everybody on one
but
side of
that-
the road versus another.
Hang on, I mean, there are unique situations, and that Sean keeps telling us that there's no precedent in planning, and I know
Right.
it maybe makes us all a little crazy sometimes.
Yeah.
But there's a reason, and that's a very good example of that, because there's so many different circumstances. And there's only one way to solve that, and that's when somebody comes and applies for this for a permit. And Sean can clarify to them, you know, that in fact, they already do own the shore road allowance, or they don't, because there are places where they own property across the road.
Yeah, and also
Hang on, Sean's got to
Sorry.
respond to that.
Yeah, and just to build on that, there are unique situations out there, and the best place to get answers to those questions is through the township. And that's where people should be directing their questions to is through us, and we would be happy to answer those questions and get back to those people.
And we will never be able to, in a public fashion, answer every question that everybody's got because of that.
Yeah. But also to the solutions that this provides, it's not just solving a problem of liability concerns. It's solving solutions for people who genuinely want to put up structures that haven't been able to because they're following the fact that they don't own the shoreline. And so it's not just about those on one side of a road versus another. There's shoreline properties that we're unable to sell for various reasons, not just ones that have a road in front of it. And this helps to solve those people's problems.
Well, and that's something that I had hoped that people would see, that I mean, we are trying to help. I know that there's a cost associated with it. And, you know, some people may take a little bit longer to come through the process than others because of that. And we'll just have to deal with that. Sean and then Deputy Mayor Dayo.
Thank you. And just going back to timing, I wanted to make a suggestion because I think I can provide answers in a faster turnaround than 2 months from now. So I think it may be beneficial to answer the questions now while they're fresh. And so I can bring my report back to the next possible council meeting with those answers, and we can post them for 2 months. And then council could review the policy.
Yep,
at
good
that
idea.
time.
Deputy Mayor Dayo.
One tiny little point on the draft that has been presented, I wonder if council would consider when we're referring to the shoreline area and keeping it in a natural state. The current draft says planting of additional vegetation on shoreline areas subject to a license of occupation is encouraged. Great. Could we potentially put the word native in there, or something that just reminds people it's not just about vegetation, it's not geraniums, we're trying to renaturalize as
Native
per,
vegetation.
you know, the native vegetation. And there's so many great resources out there to remind people of, you know, just to kind of hone in on that point. That'd be lovely.
Yeah, good idea. Madam CAO.
Just one further clarification, if I could, on the liability insurance. I didn't hear consensus on the reduction of that. So if we could get clarification, I didn't want to reiterate, I don't recommend that, but certainly council can do whatever they wish.
I think we all knew that you would not
Yes,
recommend
and
that.
of course, Steve, that's my job. We asked for $5 million on last. So just a reminder of that, that's all.
Okay, so we need to hear, I need to hear what everybody thinks about that. Councillor Barry.
I support initially starting with $2 million, and as we update our fees and services and that's something to be considered. I knew that you wouldn't be in support of that, but I'm also trying to balance.
Find a balance.
Find a balance. I had a question.
I can see your hand.
I will come back to my question.
If we're gonna have the insurance at all, then I do recommend the 2 million. It will be very expensive to go from 2 to 5 on people's policies. So for now, if we can go at the 2 million, I think that's good for now.
Councillor Shortreed.
I'm good with 2 million. Specifically because we're taking a step in the right direction to reducing the township's liability.
Deputy Mayor Dayo.
Well, you got your majority, but I'm happy to concur with the.
You know, I know that there's two things that like I've heard people say how much it's going to cost them to go from one to another. And in some cases, it's not a lot of money, but that's very subjective. What's not a lot of money to one person is a lot of money to another. It does make a big difference. The argument has been made, well, how many circumstances have you had where you've run into a liability issue in a situation like this? And unfortunately, but you know, we do have a letter on file that the public has seen recommending $2 million liability. And I suspect that was from some time ago, but it's there. And so anyway, you've got your consensus for now. And your recommendation is well noted. So I'm sure you've got a lovely resolution there.
Yeah,
Let's hear your resolution and then we'll ask for a mover and a seconders.
Based on council's direction that they rescind their resolution, which approved this policy effective today from the July 20th meeting. And that staff bring back further information to a regular council meeting in October 2023. I'll read it in full, but that's the.
Okay. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Barry, or you have a question?
In the resolution, you said it will come back in October. I think Sean's saying it would come back to the next meeting, be available for public information. So that was just my note.
Just
that the questions would be responded to before, but that the overall conversation and decision-making would take place in October. Okay,
Yeah, the report.
he looks at Sean for an answer.
Mm,
So
one
you
second.
can add that or just change that?
Well, the intent, sorry, just for clarification, this further information to regular council meeting would be the staff report, but I can say staff report if council likes.
Oh, no, okay. A mover and a seconder. Councillors Short Reed and Barry.
By Councillor Short Reed, second by Councillor Barry, be it resolved that council rescind its July 20th, 2023 resolution approving a policy as amended for license of occupation for new and existing structures on township-owned shore road allowances that are not adjacent to applicant's property with an effective date of August 17th, 2023, and that council direct staff to bring back further information to council at a regular meeting in October 2023.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. I believe that now might be an opportune time to take a break for lunch. So let's say to 12:45. Thank you. Welcome back to the open session of council. So the next item under planning are fees and bylaw, fees and change charges, sorry. I'm assuming, do you have any report on that or is that just coming to the bylaw section? Okay, so we'll move into proposed shore road allowance closing by Trika and Betker on Livingston Lake.
Thank you. This is a bylaw to close the shore road allowance in front of two properties on Livingston Lake. Council may note on the plan that a portion of the shore road allowance in front of both of these properties has already been closed, and that has been in place for some time now. So now they're looking to close the remaining balance of the shore road allowance in front of both. So it was circulated for comment, as well as to the commenting agencies, and no easements requested or objections received. So staff would support approval of the bylaw.
Any questions or comments? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to approve that? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Barry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Barry, be it resolved, council receives report PL 7923 regarding proposed shore road allowance closing. Running properties located at part of lot 8 and 9, concession 6, geographic township of Livingston Lake, and that township and that council deems the said shore road allowance to be surplus and directs a bylaw to stop up closing bay the said shore road allowance be tabled for further consideration.
All in favor? That's carried. The next is a proposed shore road allowance closing on Maple Lake by Blanchette.
Yes, this is another bylaw to close a shore road allowance in front of this property on Maple Lake. It was circulated to adjacent property owners as well as to the required agencies. No objections received or easements requested, so staff would support approval of the bylaw.
Any questions or comments? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to approve the request? Councillors Short Reed and Richards.
Moved by Councillor Short Reed, second by Councillor Richards, be it resolved, council receives report PL 8023 regarding proposed shore road allowance closing fronting property located at part of lot 28, concession 5, geographic township of Stanhope, Maple Lake, and the council deems the said shore road allowance to be surplus and directs a bylaw to stop up closing bay the said shore road allowance be tabled for further consideration.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is a proposed shore road allowance closing on Halls Lake by Barnett and Serena.
Yes, this is another bylaw to close a shore road allowance in front of this property in Halls Lake. Again, no objections were received or easements requested, so staff are in support of the bylaw being approved.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Short-Reed. Be it resolved, council receives report PL 8123 regarding proposed shore road allowance closing. Fronting property located at part of lot 15, concession 8. Geographic Township of Stanhope, Falls Lake, and that council deems the said shore road allowance to be surplus and directs the bylaw to stop up, close, and convey the said shore road allowance be tabled for further consideration.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is a proposed shore road allowance closing by R&F Mooland in Sherburne.
Yes, this is a bylaw to close the road allowance that runs between two properties that this property owner owns. It was circulated for comment and no objections were received or easements requested, so staff are recommending approval of the bylaw.
Questions or comments? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to approve it? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Richards.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, council receives report PL 82 regarding proposed road allowance closing between lots 3, concession 12 and 13, geographic township of Sherburne, and the council deems the said road allowance to be surplus and directs a bylaw to stop up, close, and convey the said road allowance be tabled for further consideration.
All in favor? That's carried. Thanks, Sarah. Next is a proposed shore road allowance closing by Clean Water Planning Inc. on Talk Lake.
Thank you. This is an application to close the shore road allowance in front of this property. The property owner is in the process of demolishing an existing structure and reconstructing a new dwelling, but they would like to purchase the property down to the water's edge. So staff are supportive of the application proceeding through the regular process.
Any questions or comments? Could I have a mover and a seconder to approve the application? Councillors Barry and Richards.
Moved by Councillor Berry, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, council receives report PL 8323 regarding proposed shore road allowance closing fronting property located at part of lot 3, concession 2, geographic township of McClintock, Clearwater Planning Inc., Talk Lake, and council approves in principle application OSRA 1023 made to stop up and close and convey the said shoreline road allowance, and the applicants are requested to proceed in accordance with the shoreline road allowance closing procedure.
All in favor? That's carried. Another proposed shore road allowance closing by an Ontario numbered company on Quagama Lake.
Yes, this is an application to close the shore road allowance on this property. Council may notice this property as it was created through a severance process. At that time, we did not proceed with the closing of this particular shore road allowance until there was clarification on an existing trail, a snowmobile trail that crosses the property. As council will note, the survey the applicant has provided shows that the trail does in fact cross onto private property, which presents some liability concerns to the property owner, and there's no easement in place for this trail. So staff are supportive of the shore road allowance now being closed based on this information we've received. The portion of land that goes through the narrows is all flooded land. So there is no shore road allowance that's above the high water mark in that area. So there's no opportunity, unfortunately, to relocate the trail to that area, as it would all be underwater.
Questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Dayu.
We've seen this in various iterations for the last couple of years. Is there any general provision then for denying an application on the basis of the mixed public use of the space going back years and years, or is that not a planning justification for denial?
So if council were to deny the application, this property owner could still block access across their property. So they would only, the users of this trail would only be able to travel the small portion, which is Township Shore Road Allowance. And there's no way for us to require them to implement a right of way in favor of those users.
I think the simple answer there was no.
It sounds no, but it sounds no to a slightly, I guess, a slightly different question, perhaps. I think this is more that a technical question. And if you go back into your books, we are often told, we understand that unless there is a planning reason to deny something, typically staff, recommend going ahead, and we've got limited justification to deny something. And I'm just trying to clarify very technically, is a long-standing mixed public use of a piece of land, a planning justification that is sort of recognized for saying no. It's mainly for public understanding of the process. I know a number of folks are watching this file, and it would be great to clarify whether that is a recognized justification or not.
Based on the information that I've been reviewing with this file, I see no reason why there would be any sort of prescriptive right to people to be able to cross this property.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. That was the clarification.
Any other questions? Councillor Berry?
So how does that work in regards to the road of travel for snowmobiles? If we approve this?
Well, so the trail is in fact trespassing on private property. So there's never been a legal right of way over this property. So if council were to deny the application, the trail can still be stopped up by the property owner because it is on their private property.
Councillor Richards?
I hate to keep going around it, but just for clarity, the trail that's on the road allowance is not accessible unless they go through the owner's property first.
That is correct.
Okay. And do you know, is it the owner's intention to stop them anyway?
Yes, they have advised that they are planning to stop access across the trail, and they've posted notice signs to that effect.
And I mean, I guess it would be up to the Snowmobile Association to come up with a different route. Do you think one would be possible?
There are other access points to that bay. They're obviously not as convenient as this particular one, but yes, there is other abilities to get in there.
Any other questions? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to approve the application? Councillors Richards and Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Richards, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, Council receives report PL 8423 regarding proposed shore road allowance closing fronting property located at part of lot 25, concession 2, geographic township of McClintock, 2697507 Ontario Inc., Quagmire Lake. And council approves in principle application OSRA 1123 made to stop up, close and convey the said shoreline road allowance, and that the applicants are requested to proceed in accordance with the shoreline road allowance closing procedure.
All in favor? That's carried. Would assure council that there's been a lot of correspondence going back and forth about this particular file, a lot of information and research done, and it's just, we've got our planning justifications. Okay, the next is the proposed shore road allowance closing on Boshkung Lake by Seed House.
Yes, this is an application to close the shore road allowance on this front of this property. Nothing of particular note, and staff would be supportive of it proceeding through the regular process.
Any questions or comments? Could I have a mover and a seconder to proceed? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Richards.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, council receives report PL 8523 regarding proposed shore road allowance closing fronting property located at part of lot 12, concession 1, geographic township of Stanhope, Seed House, Boshkung Lake. and the council approves in principle application OSRA 1223 made to stop up, close, and convey the said shoreline road allowance. And that the applicants are requested to proceed in accordance with the shoreline road allowance closing procedure.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is the proposed shore road allowance closing by Southie on Beach Lake.
Thank you. Yes, another application to close the shore road allowance in front of this property. Again, nothing of particular note, and staff would support the application proceeding through the regular process.
Questions or comments? Can I have a mover and a seconder then? Councillors at Shortreed and Barry.
Moved by Council Shortreed, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved, council receives report PL 8623 regarding proposed shore road allowance closing fronting property located at a part of lot 18, concession 4, geographic township of Stanhope, Southie Beach Lake, and the council approves in principle application OSRA 1323 made to stop up, close, and convey the said shoreline road allowance, and that the applicants are requested to proceed in accordance with shoreline road allowance closing procedure.
All in favor? It's carried. Finally, a proposed shore road allowance closing on Cushog Lake. Did I just do that? By Carter.
Yeah, thank you. This is another application to close the shore road allowance in front of this property, and again, nothing of particular note, so staff would support the application proceeding through the regular process.
Any questions or comments? Mover and a seconder then? Councillors Barry and Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, council receives report PLA 723 regarding proposed shore road allowance closing fronting property located at part of lot 3, concession 6, geographic township of Stanhope, Carter, Cushog Lake, and the council approves in principle application OSR 1423 made to stop up, close, and convey the said shoreline road allowance, that the applicants are requested to proceed in accordance with shoreline road allowance closing procedure.
All in favor? That's carried. Question for you, Mr. O'Callaghan. I'm just, there's quite a list of proposed shore road allowance closing. Is this an average for this time of year, or are you seeing more of these applications lately?
They've been fairly consistent. I would say they pick up slightly during the summer season while construction is taking place, and
Seasonal people
applicants,
are here.
yeah, they find out they have to purchase it for future projects they're planning. But yes, it has been, yeah, quite a few coming in lately.
I was just kind of hoping that there was no link between the discussions on license of occupation and the applications. But so this is pretty basic.
Yeah, I have had inquiries on that, but I have clarified at that point. In these cases, the license of occupation would not impact their application.
Okay, thank you. So next up is your planning department update.
Yeah, thank you. I really have nothing to highlight, but I'm happy to answer questions if council has any.
Any questions on the planning update? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the report? Councillor Shortreed and Richards.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved that council receives report PL 8823 submitted by Sean O'Callaghan dated August 17th, 2023 for information.
All in favor? That's carried. And finally, the Committee of Adjustment minutes from June the 30th and July the 28th. Were there any questions or comments about that? I will say that at the Oxtongue Lake meeting, I made a note of letting folks know that we were hoping to find another member for the committee, you know, from the north. And there was one gentleman who came forward and said that he would be in contact with you. So hopefully, have you heard from someone?
I have not.
Okay, well, hopefully that you will in the near future. And I think they were very receptive to the idea that we were looking for a northern member. So could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive these two sets of minutes, Councillors Barry and Richards?
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved that the June 30th and July 28th, 2023 Committee of Adjustment meeting minutes be received as information.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Well done. Lots of work today. So into external boards and external boards and meetings. Anything on the partnership? Councillor Shortreed.
The partnership and hub don't meet in the summer.
Okay. Anything on the Upper Trent Water Management Partnership? Councillor Richards.
There hasn't been a meeting for the Upper Trent Water Management, and the Muskoka Watershed also hasn't had a meeting, but there's one coming. However, there has been some correspondence which I've sent on to you about a municipal conference that they are looking to see if any of us are interested in attending.
Thank you. Anything on Muskoka Watershed Council? That's okay, sorry. With respect to CPAC, we have not yet had another meeting, but there's a doodle poll out and hopefully there will be a meeting shortly, and I will bring up the issue of speeding and anything else that someone is concerned about in Algonquin Highlands that they'd like me to raise. Sorry.
I did just have a question on other issues with the OPP. I'm wondering, I know that they do come out on the lakes to do checking for boater licenses and that kind of thing. I'm wondering if they got a noise complaint on a water access only property, do they send an officer out in a boat to deal with that complaint, or is that something they just really can't deal with?
I will check on that. That's not something that I'm sure about. I do know that they were they are bumping up their numbers in the detachment, and they were planning on doing more water patrols, but whether they would respond to that specific concern. I will inquire for you. With respect to EORN, things are moving along well. I had kind of thought that we might see an application here today, but I know that there was a public meeting in Oxtongue this week on Monday. Any notion about how that went?
Yes, it was very well received. Some good questions asked, some good answers offered. And since then, the Oxtongue Lake Association has done a public opinion survey to get a sense of where people are landing now. And I believe since we've been sitting here, the results of that have been circulated to council, the CAO, and the planner, the town planner. So we shall have that to read at our leisure before the application is presented.
Oh, right on. Great. And I do know that there are one or two more applications that are kind of in the wings in the Stanhope area. So we'll deal with them as they come. You haven't heard anything more on that, John? Okay. Anything, well, I guess we pretty much got up to date on the library board. Anything you'd like to add?
No, the library board has not sat, neither has the community safety and wellbeing plan, nor the Muskoka River Watershed Communications Committee.
Great reports, everyone. Okay, we have nothing under general business. Is there any notice of motion? Okay, next is the correspondence listing. Was there anyone that asked to support? Oh, the province taking action on the short-term rentals. I thought that it might support our initiatives with respect to short-term rentals if the province put some regulations in place. I'm wondering if we could have a seconder on that. Councillor Richards. Okay, we'll have a Councillor Richards moves it and Councillor Deputy Mayor Dayus seconds.
No.
No?
No. I wondered if I might request a recorded vote for that, and I will decline.
Okay, okay. Could you take a recorded vote, please? Sorry.
Seconder was Councillor Vickers.
Yes.
Moved by Mayor Jameson, second by Councillor Richards, be it resolved that council supports the Township of Sioux Narrows, Nestor Falls Resolution number 8923, requesting the government of Ontario to establish regular framework for digital platforms such as Airbnb and Verbo. And further, that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Premier of Ontario, Honorable Doug Ford, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Honorable Steve Clark, MP Larry Scott, and AMO. Deputy Mayor Dayu, yay or nay?
I'll decline to vote. Thank you.
It's a nay.
No, I apologize. Because of my conflict of interest, I would like to be, to not register a vote at all.
How do we deal with that? I mean, because she wouldn't have known that I wanted to support that, so couldn't have declared a conflict at the beginning of the meeting.
I would suggest then declare. We've had the discussion, but you would have to declare now because in attendance you have to vote and abstaining is a negative vote.
At county yesterday, my name wasn't called at all, so I wonder what that provision was. Oh, I'll obviously do whatever is appropriate here for Algonquin Highlands. And I'm very happy to write a little declaration of.
We will
conflict of
record it
interest.
in the minutes as obviously you weren't aware of the motion coming forward and a declaration. We'll have that add to the registry.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely.
With Deputy Mayor having a conflict, I don't think she can call for a recorded vote. Can she, Madam Clerk?
Well, I think.
I'll let you do
probably- I
arm
think
wrestle
the-
over that one.
I think the confusion is that Deputy Mayor Day wasn't aware this was coming forward, because if she was, she wouldn't be here to call a recorded vote. So I'm assuming you wanted to declare an interest had you known. And then there wouldn't have been a recorded vote because Deputy,
I wouldn't have.
you wouldn't have been asking for one. You were thinking a recorded vote would get you away from voting.
It did yesterday at county, which
Yeah, well,
is.
we're not at the county here.
No,
so-
I realize that. My answer is I expected that I could do it again, but if we've got a different protocol here, then I'll follow whatever protocol our clerk suggests.
Sorry, I think now that you realize you have a declaration, there's no, you can declare.
Okay.
And you'll record it in. We'll record it in the minutes that
You're-
you declared a pecuniary interest or an interest, sorry, and you can just fill out the form and we'll add it to the registry and we'll. Perfect. Start the resolution again.
Sure.
Shall I declare now?
Thank you. Yes.
Madam Mayor, I have a conflict of interest on the forthcoming conversation on short-term rental legislation, as I have a family lodge.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Dayu. So now I just say all in favor rather than take a recorded vote. All in favor? That's carried. That was interesting. I know it may appear to be somewhat confusing from time to time to see different procedures followed by different clerks, but I think it all comes down to the procedural bylaws that we've got in place. And Algonquin Highlands is, after all, rather unique. Okay, so we are now moving into close. So could I have a mover and a seconder to move into closed session? Councilors Richards and Shorreed. And Mr. O'Callaghan will remain for this conversation.
Moved by Councillor Richards, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, the council hereby adjourns its open session at 1:14 PM in order to proceed into closed session for the purpose of discussing the following matters in accordance with section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001 SO 2001 as amended. Section 239(2) and 239(2) regarding a proposed acquisition of land and plans and instructions for negotiations, county road and contract negotiations. Section 239(2) and 239(2) regarding a proposed acquisition of land and plans and instructions for negotiations, county road and contract negotiations. Section 239(2) and 239(2) personal matters about identifiable individuals and advice subject to solicitor-client privilege. Private property matter, section 239(2) and 239(2) proposed acquisition of land and advice subject to solicitor-client privilege, Dorset Pavilion Park. Section 239(2) personal matters about identifiable individuals, candidates for Recreation and Airport Committee.
All in favor? That's carried. Yes, ma'am. Welcome back to the open session. We're now into the bylaws section. We do have a resolution, however, to appoint new members to the Recreation and Airport Committees. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Shortreed and Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved, council appoint Trish Hewitt and Karen Ibsher to the Recreation Committee for the remaining term of council, and that council appoints Mark Downton to the Stanhope Airport Committee for the remaining term of council.
All in favor? That's carried. And next, a mover and a seconder for the bylaws. Councillor Berry, seconded by Councillor Richards.
Moved by Councillor Berry. Seconded by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved that the following bylaws be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with a corporate seal of fix. 2023-68 fees and charges, 2023-70 to amend bylaw comprehensive zoning bylaw 2022-49 is amended, application AHZBA 123. 2023-71 to stop up closing of a part of the shore road allowance. Trika and Betker, 2023-72 to stop up closing and convey part of the shore road allowance Blanchette, 2023-73 to stop up closing of a part of the shore road allowance Barrett and Sereno, 2023-74 to stop up closing of a part of the road. Sorry, let me start again, please. 2023-74 to stop up closing of a part of the road allowance RNF Moulin Limited, 2023-75 to execute an agreement with Cox Farm Minden, 2023-77 to appoint municipal law enforcement officer for the Township of Algonquin Highlands, Halliburton Water Trails.
All in favor? That's carried. Wow, we got through all those bylaws fast.
Sorry.
About the one about fees and services. Was that just up there to do, was that just in conjunction with the discussion on the encroachment? Was that the only fee that was being changed?
The fee that was proposed in there was to add to a legal deposit for license of occupation in the planning schedule.
So depending on the further discussion, that could be changed again?
I would suggest that that particular fee probably wouldn't, not for the legal fees. But I mean, that can be reversed if we decide that, you know, that we want to change it.
Okay.
Pass now. Maybe. Could I have a mover and a seconder for the confirming bylaw, please? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Richards.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Richards, be it resolved bylaw 2023-78 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council held during its August 17th, 2023 regular meeting be received and read a first time, considered, read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed.
All in favor? And finally, could I have a mover and a seconder to adjourn? Councillor Shortreed and Barry.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Barry, be resolved that the August 17th, 2023 council meeting be adjourned at 2:47